Chapter 176. Guangdong Lu's eyes narrowed as he spoke in a cold voice. Why can't I have a clear conscience? Qing Han is the Guan family's daughter, and this matter has arisen because of her. If the family had the ability to protect her, then we would have spared no effort to protect her, but if the family doesn't have the ability to do so, then we would have no choice but to sacrifice ourselves. Bullshit. You haven't tried, and you haven't made any effort, so how do you know that you can't protect her? You're only willing to sacrifice your daughter's happiness. Are you still a man? You're a coward. Jun Moxie was furious. You're afraid of the enemy's strength, that's all. But do you think that your daughter needs your protection when she's weaker than the Guan family's forces? You bully the weak and fear the strong, and you're just looking for an excuse for your cowardice. Guangdong Lu's complexion became even more calm. If I can save the Guan family by sacrificing one person, then why wouldn't it be worth it? If I could save the entire Guan family by sacrificing my life, then I would have gone to that old man Li Ju Tian a long time ago, but what's the point? I've brought disaster upon the entire Guan family in order to protect my daughter, and I'm willing to sacrifice the entire Guan family in a gamble that I'm bound to lose. Will the world say that I'm noble and great? My choice is admittedly for the sake of the Guan family, but isn't it also for the sake of the friendship between our two families and the safety of the Jun family? If I really wanted to stay out of this matter, then I can only push all the blame onto the Jun family. How would my Guan family suffer if that happened? One couldn't help but admit that Guangdong Lu's words were reasonable. As the head of a family with over 1,000 members, the choices he could make were very limited. Moreover, the fact that he didn't abandon the Jun family at this time was commendable. But being reasonable and commendable didn't mean that he would be accepted. Well said, sister-in-law Qing Han is now a member of the Jun family, and no longer the Guan family's daughter. She's a member of the Jun family in life, and a ghost of the Jun family in death. A married girl is like spilled water, and has nothing to do with the Guan family. You really don't have the right to decide anything. Jun Moxie said in a powerful voice. He sneered and continued in a contemptuous tone, as for your Guan family, you can't even protect your own daughter, so what's the point of dragging out your feeble existence? Let's just cut our throats together. The Shuehan manor had taken a liking to Guan Qing Han, and if they couldn't satisfy them, then both the Jun family and the Guan family would inevitably suffer a calamity. No one had ever dared to violate the authority of the Shuehan manor. Guangdong Lu, as well as the entire Guan family, although they were helpless, in a sense it was also understandable. He believed that many people would make the same choice, and marriage between women was a very common thing in this era. In Guangdong Lu's eyes, sacrificing a woman in exchange for the survival of two great clans was a perfectly reasonable choice. There was no need to make such a contradictory choice. She was just a woman. So what if she was his biological daughter? However, Jun Moxie would never allow himself to live in such shame. What kind of man could he be if he couldn't even protect a woman from his own clan? What was the point of living in such humiliation? From Jun Moxie's point of view, it wasn't a matter of Guan Qing Han's reputation or survival. It was a matter of his own principles. Perhaps such a decision was stupid, or perhaps such a decision would lead to the destruction of both the Guan family and the Jun family. But in Jun Moxie's heart, there was no room for compromise. Even if it meant sacrificing the lives of millions of people in Tianxiang, Jun Moxie would still make the same choice. Life or death. What the hell? A man lives with a single breath, and a Buddha fights for a single incense. If he had to give away an innocent woman in exchange for his own survival, then he might as well just die. It didn't matter if he was innocent or not, it was still a disgrace. A man couldn't bear such a disgrace. Not to mention that this had happened right beside him. Even if Jun Moxie hadn't been by his side, he wouldn't have been the first to punish the bully who had kidnapped the girl. Instead, he would have gone to exterminate the entire family who had given away their daughter. You don't have the right to live in this world. If you lose your dignity as a human, then what's the point of living? Don't you want to survive? Then I'll destroy you first. I'll let you survive. Survival my ass. Hitman Jun's argument was undoubtedly very different, and had greatly deviated from the style of this world, so it was naturally difficult to gain the approval of most people, such as Jun Sun Shao. You will bring disaster to the Jun family if you do this. Have you ever considered the disaster that your impulsive decision will bring? Even if it's the Jun family, do you think it's only yours? Guangdong Lu was somewhat angry as he spoke in a heavy tone. I am the only heir to the Jun family. The future of the Jun family is in my hands. If it's destined to be destroyed in my hands, then I don't mind doing it sooner. My decision is the Jun family's decision. Jun Moxie straightened his back, and looked at Guangdong Lu with a sharp gaze as he spoke. Lord Guan, the Jun family does not agree to break off the engagement. Your Guan family has already done their best, so you can stay out of this matter. Then he turned his head and looked at Guan Qinghan. If the Jun family can't protect her, then I will personally kill her before the Jun family is destroyed. I would rather die than accept this humiliation. Guan Qinghan's matter had aroused Jun Moxie's incomparable stubbornness. These words vividly displayed the evil in his bones. 10,000 people will die for one person. It doesn't matter. What righteousness? What big picture? Fuck off. A Jun family member lives as a member of the Jun family, and dies as a member of the Jun family. A dead person will always be a member of the Jun family no matter where they go. Jun Moxie's temperament had always been like this, whether it was in his previous life or this one. Even if it wasn't for Guan Qinghan, he would still make the same choice. Even if it was a woman he didn't know, he would still do the same. Guan Qinghan's tears flowed down her cheeks. She had already given up all hope, and had already accepted her fate. The Shuehan Manor was the most forbidden place in the entire continent. The world was so big, and there were so many talented people, but how many people would dare to disobey the orders of the Shuehan Manor? Even Jun Wui wouldn't be able to stop Guangdong Lu if he insisted on going his own way. After all, Guan Qinghan was the daughter of the Guan family's Guangdong Lu. She only needed to cancel the engagement, and then she would have nothing to do with the Jun family. Guan Qinghan was even prepared to sacrifice herself for the Shuehan Manor, and then commit suicide. But she had never expected that at this moment, Jun Moxie would actually stand up. She had always looked down on this brother-in-law of hers, and had abused him for several months. This debauchee brother-in-law of hers had actually said such words. He would rather die together with her than let her accept and face her tragic fate. In fact, he would even sacrifice his entire family for her sake. From Jun Moxie's resolute tone, Guan Qinghan could clearly feel that Jun Moxie was willing to sacrifice everything for her, and that he was willing to make the whole world his enemy. Guan Qinghan wanted to burst into tears at this moment. Even her father and family had abandoned her, and her life was filled with darkness and despair, but there was still such a person who would stand up for her at all costs. Jun Moxie's thin stature and narrow shoulders had suddenly become the most reliable thing in her life. In this storm, he had become the only thing she could rely on, the last thing she could rely on. A moment ago, she had been moved by Guan Qingyu's feelings for you, But now, how could Guan Qingyu be compared to Jun Moxie? At the very least, Guan Qingyu had come to persuade her to cancel the engagement and remarry, but Jun Moxie had chosen to protect her without any hesitation. One was willing to drag out an ignoble existence, willing to betray his sister for the sake of survival, willing to disregard his principles for the sake of a prostitute. But the other was fierce and fierce, willing to face any difficulties. This was simply incomparable. It was like heaven and earth, and there was simply no comparison. Thinking up to here, Guan Qinghan's face suddenly turned red, as if it was on fire. Suddenly, a thought arose in her heart that almost made her want to hide her face and hide her face. Could it be that, his feelings for me? Was it only because of his identity, he pretended to be like that? Otherwise, why would he be so agitated today? There was not even the slightest bit of hesitation. It was as if he was already prepared, willing to sacrifice his life to fight against the world. Heavens, what should I do now? Panic, despair, agitation, emotion. Guan Qinghan stood there in a daze, her heart in turmoil. What she did not know was that Jun Moxie's actions were not because of Guan Qinghan, but because of Jun Moxie's own principles. Jun Moxie's principles would never change, and his pride would never change. He would rather fight against the world than drag out an ignoble existence. In the heart of the king of assassins, life and death were but a dream, ordinary and unimportant. But his principles and pride were what kept Jun Moxie moving forward. This was something that he would never compromise on. Guan Donglu was frightened by Jun Moxie's fierce attitude, and felt an indescribable feeling in his heart, but then he thought of his family's decades of foundation, and couldn't help but feel anxious in his heart. He turned to Jun Wui and said, "Brother Jun, the third young master's words are certainly heroic, but being young and hot-blooded isn't a foolproof plan. For the sake of the bigger picture, Brother Jun should consider it carefully. The Jun family is not something my Guan family can compare to, but the Shuehan manor." Jun Wui smiled faintly, his face was calm as he calmly said, "Moxia is right, Qing Han is still the daughter-in-law of the Jun family, and a member of the Jun family. Moxia's decision is the decision of the Jun family." Jun Wui's voice was resounding as he calmly sat in his wheelchair, his back straight, and his broad shoulders seemingly able to lift up the winds and clouds. Jun Moxie may be young and hot-blooded, but these words coming from Jun Wui's mouth were tantamount to issuing a declaration of war against the Shuehan manor. Guan Donglu stood in a daze, and remained silent for a long time. Suddenly, a strong sense of guilt rose from the bottom of his heart. He had already given up on his own daughter, but the Jun family didn't hesitate at all. He didn't know that the Jun family and the Silver Blizzard City had countless ties, and even had an irreconcilable enmity with each other. And now, because of Guan Qinghan's matter, the Shuehan manor has become their enemy. Both the Jun family and the Shuehan manor are standing on opposite sides. One on the south, one on the north, and the other on the south. But Jun Moxie and Jun Wui were still smiling indifferently, and were still laughing in a heroic manner. Chapter 177. Guan Qinghan could no longer hold back her tears, and they flowed out of her eyes. The despair and resentment in his heart had suddenly turned into gratitude in the few words they had spoken just now. When her father said that he would give up on her, even though Guan Qinghan understood and even empathized with her father's choice, she still couldn't help but feel pain in her heart. She had even thought that even if she had to sacrifice herself for these two families, she wouldn't let that hateful person touch her. The day the sedan arrives at the Shuehan castle would be the day she sets foot on the Yellow Springs. But now, Guan Qinghan suddenly changed her mind. People can't always plan for themselves in life. She had thought that her father's words, her family's consideration, and her willingness to set foot on the sedan was already very great. But at this moment, after witnessing the choices of the Jun family, Jun Moxie, and Jun Wui, Guan Qinghan felt that perhaps she hadn't done enough. Looking at Jun Moxie and Jun Wui, Guan Qinghan's heart was filled with infinite warmth. For these people who care about me, even if I have to sacrifice the rest of my life, so what? As long as they can live peacefully and happily, isn't that better than anything else? I can be unwilling to be humiliated and commit suicide, but if the Shuehan castle takes its anger out on the Guan and Jun families, wouldn't that be a greater sin for me? How can I implicate such heroic men and heroic families? How can I let them sacrifice themselves for me, and let countless innocent lives be humiliated, trampled, and killed? How can I bear to do that? How can my heart be at peace? Third uncle, father, I have something to say. When Guan Qinghan turned her face, she had already restored her usual cold appearance, and looked even colder. If you have anything to say it, third uncle will definitely support you. Jun Wui looked at her, and suddenly a bad feeling arose in his heart. Guan Qinghan quietly raised her head and looked at the heavy rain outside the hall. She finally made up her mind. She slowly knelt down in front of Jun Wui and slowly kowtowed 8 times. She raised her head, looked at Jun Wui, and calmly said, "Originally, Qing Han had no right to intervene in the family's affairs, but the cause of this matter is Qing Han. Qing Han is the eldest daughter of the Guan family, and was once the granddaughter-in-law of the Jun family. Not only was she unable to do her best for both the Jun and Guan families, but she also provoked such a disaster. This is a grave sin, and I hope that third uncle, third brother, Mo Xia, and father will no longer argue over this matter." During this period of time, Qing Han had also thought through many things in her heart. Although Qing Han and Mo Yu were engaged to be husband and wife, they weren't husband and wife in name. So, it would be inappropriate for her to shamelessly stay in the Jun residence for too long. Therefore, Qing Han boldly asks the third uncle for forgiveness. "Qing Han wants to." Guan Qing Han bit her lower lip and said word by word, "Cancel the engagement." She weakly lowered her head, as if she had used up all the strength in her body. This matter should have been handled by Qing Han personally apologizing to grandfather, but Qing Han really doesn't have the face to kowtow to him, so I can only ask third uncle to help me. Tomorrow, Qing Han will follow father back to the Guan family. From now on, I, Guan Qing Han, will no longer have any relationship with the Jun family. Jun Wui almost jumped out of his wheelchair. Guan Qing Han's words emphasized that she was only the eldest daughter of the Guan family, and didn't recognize herself as the daughter-in-law of the Jun family. What did this mean? Guan Donglu was aghast when he heard his daughter's words, but there was also a sense of understanding in his heart, as well as a sense of comfort in his heart. With a daughter like this, what more can I ask for? His daughter's choice could be said to be the best choice for the Jun family and the Guan family. However, this girl has suffered. 2 lines of tears silently flowed down his cheeks. Jun Moxie looked at Guan Qing Han in surprise, and saw that her face was still cold and calm, without the slightest ripple, but her hands were clenched so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Jun Moxie immediately understood what she meant. "Qing Han, this decision is no small matter, as it concerns your entire life. I advise you to reconsider. You only need to say one word, and you will forever be the daughter-in-law of the Jun family. As long as the Jun family is still breathing, no one will be able to force you." Jun Wui's eyes didn't look at Guan Qing Han, but rather at his own hands, which already possessed the strength of Tian Xian. "There is no need to reconsider, I have already made up my mind, and I hope that the third uncle will agree." Guan Qing Han smiled sadly. "In fact, Mo Yu and I have only met 3 times, that's all. What happened back then was also my unrepentant stubbornness, and..." Guan Qing Han turned her head and looked at her father. Guan Donglu turned his head away in embarrassment. As a father, he didn't dare to look directly at his daughter's eyes at this moment. He was afraid that his heart would soften, and he would open his mouth to stop his daughter. Guan Qing Han smiled lightly and changed the topic. "Time will never turn back, and the past is the past. In fact, it was only a verbal engagement back then, and now even the annulment documents are unnecessary. Qing Han's future marriage will have nothing to do with the Jun family." Jun Moxie could sense that Guan Qing Han wanted to say something, but then hesitated several times as she said this. It was obvious that she was very excited. This caused him to involuntarily ponder over the matter as he looked at Guan Donglu with a questioning gaze. Could it be that there was some hidden agenda behind the marriage that year? "Qing Han, the third uncle knows that you didn't want to implicate us, so you decided to sacrifice yourself. However, it was already too late for this matter to develop to this point. It's too late even if you annul the engagement and declare that you are no longer related to the Jun family. As long as I know about this, I won't ignore it no matter how you look at it." Jun Wui pondered for a moment, and then suddenly smiled. "Qing Han, don't forget that the third uncle may be a cripple now, but I was once a soldier, and I will always be a soldier. A soldier has the courage of a soldier. A marriage is such a humiliating matter, and as long as a soldier has the courage of a soldier, they will never agree to it." Moreover, this matter happened to you, the daughter-in-law of the Jun family. Jun Wui raised his eyebrows. I can agree to annul the marriage. But the Shui Han manor is something that the Jun family will not allow. You may not be the daughter-in-law of the Jun family, but you are still the daughter of the Jun family, and no one will be allowed to tarnish the Jun family. That's right. Well said, third uncle. Jun Moxie Lenglang said, even if you have good intentions, and don't want to implicate the Jun family, but the Jun family can't withdraw from this matter. Even if you are determined to annul the marriage, we can't let you go back to the Guan family. Do you think that we're only doing this for the sake of that marriage? Humph. This is already a great shame for the Jun family. Jun Moxie glared at her. Don't think too highly of yourself. Why are women always so short-sighted? Jun Moxie's voice was Lenglang's, and his words were quite unpleasant to hear, but Guan Qinghan couldn't help but feel moved when she heard them. Jun Wui called for a servant, and whispered a few words in his ear. The servant quickly walked inside, and after a short while, he took out a small wooden box. He handed it over to Jun Wui. Jun Wui held the wooden box in his hand, and said, Niece Qinghan, this is the annulment document. This annulment document had already been drawn up when you first entered the Jun family's door. The person who presided over it was my father. Once this matter with the Blood Soul Manor is settled, I will announce to the world on behalf of the Jun family that you, Guan Qinghan, have no relationship with the Jun family. But before that, you are still the daughter-in-law of the Jun family. Even if you deny it, we will never agree. Jun Moxie smiled as he looked at the wooden box, and leisurely said, I believe that this wooden box can only have two endings. First, we can safely pass through this hurdle, and then I will personally open it, and give you back your freedom. Second, it will be buried together with us, and you, and turn into ashes. Even if its body is torn to pieces, we will never let it safely enter the Shuehan manor. Jun Moxie smiled, and lightly said. But this simple and indifferent sentence perfectly expressed his determination to go to the netherworld together, even if it meant perishing together indiscriminately. Guan Qinghan's phoenix eyes were blurred with tears, but when she saw Jun Moxie's calm and warm smile, and saw the heroic spirit of the world brimming between his eyebrows, she didn't know why, but her confused heart suddenly calmed down. Guan Donglu felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. His daughter's righteous decision had made him infinitely sad, but had also made him feel gratified. But in the time it took to say a few words, the situation had developed to such an extent that he couldn't even try to persuade her. He sighed heavily, and ferociously stamped his foot. Brother Jun, how can I say this to you? Aren't you letting down Qinghan's kind intentions by making such a choice? Is this really good for the country, for the family, for others, and for yourself? I understand Brother Guan's difficulties, but I also understand Qinghan's good intentions. Jun Wui smiled in understanding. Brother Guan is right. I believe that even the current emperor would have made the same choice as Brother Guan. No one can say that you're wrong, it's just that everyone's standpoint is different. In fact, this is the biggest conflict between the military and the government. The government seeks stability, while the military seeks blood and iron. This cannot be reconciled. If the government seeks blood and iron, then the country will inevitably fall apart, but if the military seeks stability, then the country will not be far from being destroyed. And if our Jun family, as the head of the military, were to compromise on such a matter, then wouldn't we become a laughing stock for all eternity? It's not that we don't want to, it's just that we can't, and we don't dare to. Guan Donglu slapped his forehead. How could I have forgotten about this matter? Running to the house of a bunch of war maniacs to propose a marriage alliance, isn't that just asking for trouble? It's all that damn beast's fault. Why did he have to expose this matter in front of so many people, bringing harm to the Jun family and the Guan family? Brother Guan, feel free to follow the Guan family's arrangements. No matter what the final outcome is, we won't blame you. As for Qinghan, please stay with the Jun family for the time being. Jun Wui smiled, although his voice was slow, but there was no room for refusal. Guan Donglu sighed, remained silent for a moment, then finally got up and strode out of the room. There was no longer any room for negotiation, and as the head of the family, he had to make many arrangements. After all, the Jun family was not the only one facing disaster, the Guan family was also facing disaster. As for the matter of your second son and that woman, I have other plans. I ask Brother Guan not to interfere in this matter. Guan Donglu had originally intended to go to the Spirit Fog Lake's Anai Chang Pavilion to settle accounts with but Jun Wuyi's words immediately dispelled that idea. He walked to the door and stood still for a moment, then said, "The Li family only gave us 2 months, I ask third brother Jun to make plans as soon as possible." Jun Wuyi's eyes flashed as he said, "Thank you, Brother Guan, you should also go back and prepare." Guan Donglu stomped his foot and left the room. Chapter 178. Well, it's all right. You two go back and rest. Jun Wuyi looked at Jun Moxie and Guan Qinghan. Don't worry, the sky won't fall. Even if it does, there's still third uncle to hold it for you. Guan Qinghan sobbed with excitement. Jun Moxie's eyes flashed, but no one knew what he was thinking. Suddenly, his lips curled into a cruel arc. He had made up his mind in an instant. He slowly said, "I'm going out for a while." Without waiting for Jun Wuyi and Guan Qinghan to react, Jun Moxie suddenly turned around and walked out step by step. His body flashed and disappeared into the wind and rain. Outside the hall, the heavy rain continued. The sky was completely dark. Jun Wuyi's face was calm, his eyes were deep. Guan Qinghan stood quietly in front of the hall, looking at the rain lines from the sky to the ground outside the pavilion. Her expression was cold and motionless. The rain splashed on the ground, then splashed on her face and body. The autumn rain already had a sense of coldness. Li family. Jun Moxie was assassinated today. Li Yuran wore a mask, his eyes revealing a look of great interest. Is he dead? No. Standing in front of Li Yuran was a man dressed in black, thin and capable. At the critical moment, a mysterious person appeared and killed many assassins. He killed many of the assassins, so this person was too strong, and the assassins knew that it was time to retreat. Do you know who assassinated Jun Moxie? Li Yuran didn't care about Jun Moxie's life or death, he didn't care about that kind of debauchery. What he cared about was the strength that went against the Jun family. This, I'm not sure yet. The man in black lowered his head. Investigate. Li Yuran ordered Lenglang. The man in black trembled. He hurriedly responded, "Yes. This subordinate will go and investigate immediately." Ever since Li Yuran was injured and her face was damaged, she had never gone out. She had been staying at home all the time. Her temper was getting weirder and weirder, which made her subordinates even more frightened. Li Yuran walked into the inner chamber and pressed her hand on the wall. The stone door creaked and revealed a door. Inside, there was a wide stone staircase. Following it to the end, there was a large underground stone room. There was another stone staircase leading upwards. It seemed like there was another exit. Li Yuran slowly walked up the stone steps. A moment later, the sound of heavy rain could be heard. It was getting closer and closer to the ground. Li Yuran's silhouette also appeared in a secluded courtyard. "Yuran, is there any news about Xian Dan?" In the small courtyard, there were 10 people in white, all of them dressed as white as snow. There were both men and women, and the one who spoke first was a man in his 40s in white. He was tall and sturdy, and his eyes were like lightning. His expression was calm, and his tone carried a sense of superiority. Behind him was a woman in her 30s. The rest of the people were sitting on either side of him. The man in white who had helped Li Yuran to silence Jun Moxie some time ago was also among them. He was the third person from the left. Replying to eldest brother. Li Yuran respectfully saluted. "We haven't received any news so far. But, junior brother has already cast a wide net. He won't miss anything. So, we'll be the first to know if this treasure appears in the world." However, we need to pay attention to the fact that people from the Silver Blizzard City have arrived. Moreover, Shi Changshao has come in person. As far as we know, there are no less than 4 great masters Xinxian in the Tianxiang city. Countless Tianxian experts have arrived from all over the Tianxiang city. If the Xian Dan appears, then all parties will fight for it. Our chances of winning are not very high, and we may not be able to come out on top. In terms of individual strength, we might be inferior if Master hadn't arrived. But in terms of overall strength, we have 6 Tianxian experts and 4 Earth Xian experts. Do you think we're afraid of them? We only need to seize the Xian Dan as soon as possible. The rest of us will bring up the rear, and one of us will escape at full speed. Then, even if Yun Bichen comes, we will be able to stop him for a while. The middle-aged man was very conceited, and said gently, "Brotherly, you don't need to worry about this. Yes, I will rely on my fellow brothers and sisters." Li Yuran smiled and said, "But the last time, I always felt that the explosion of the jade coral was a bit strange. Can I ask 6th brother to help me keep an eye on the people from the magnificent jewel hall?" A thin man smiled and said, "It's a small matter. Junior brother, please don't hesitate to say it. The so-called people who are involved in the magnificent jewel hall. 6th brother's Xian Qi cultivation may not be very high, but when it comes to tracking and spying, I am confident that I won't lose to anyone." This person was Li Yuran's senior and junior brothers. He was the one with the best lightness kung fu. He was also the most adept at tracking, concealing, and gathering information. In addition to the magnificent jewel hall, there are also Tang Yuan and Jun Moxie. These 2 people are currently at the Jun residence. Tang Yuan is currently injured, so he can relax a little. The main one is Jun Moxie. I always feel that there is something strange about him. Li Yuran's face behind the mask seemed to be in deep thought. In the end, these 2 places are heavily guarded. 6th brother, please be careful and don't let your guard down. Rest assured, do you not believe in your 6th brother's martial arts? This guy's tracking trick is something that even I can't detect. Even Master praised him for it. The eldest brother smiled and glared fiercely at the 6th brother. The woman behind him smiled sweetly. "Eldest brother, are you thinking about the unbearable past again?" The grand senior brother snorted and said, "What do you mean by unbearable? It's probably some undignified and despicable means. That day, when Master asked me to retrieve the flying diagram, I went excitedly. In the end, this fellow secretly stuck a picture of a turtle on my back, and I didn't even notice it." Everyone laughed. Li Yuran could not help but smile and said, "Since even eldest brother can't detect it, I believe there are not many people in the world who can. With 6th brother's help, I have nothing to worry about." At this moment, suddenly, a string of small bells hanging in the corner of the room rang crisply. Li Yuran's expression changed. This bell was connected to the main room. Unless there was an emergency, it would not ring. Could it be that something unexpected had happened? Or could it be that something unexpected had happened? "Brothers, please sit down for a while. I'll be back soon. Now that it's raining heavily, I don't think anything has happened." Li Yuran said calmly. "Junior brother, please go ahead. We're all on the same side. There's no need to be so courteous. Let's not delay our business." The middle-aged man in white sent them off with a smile. After a while, Li Yuran suddenly emerged from the ground. Before anyone could say anything, he had already said anxiously, "The Xian Dan's aura has appeared. It's in the west of the city. The news is accurate. In a while, a large number of masters will be gathering in the west of the city." In the past 5 years, Li Yuran had always been calm and graceful. This was the first time he had spoken in such a hurried tone. The 10 people heard this and stood up at the same time. The eldest brother's expression was cold. He waved his hand and said, "Everyone, move out. Go to the west of the city." The 10 figures dashed into the wind and rain with a swoosh. Blue light and yellow gas flashed at high speed. With a swoosh, they disappeared without a trace. Li Yuran stood in front of the stairs and looked at the misty sky. She did not know why, but she felt a little depressed. West of the city. The young Master Jun was inside an exceptionally dilapidated house. He had changed his appearance, and was wearing a veil over his face. There was a dusty table in front of him, and a black Xian core was quietly placed on it. This obviously wasn't the 9th level Xian Dan that he had obtained by chance. It was the 6th level Xian Dan that Jun Wui had given him. Although it was a rare item, it wasn't too precious. So, any powerful family would be able to purchase it. Jun Mo Xia had made such a bold and visionary statement, pledging his life to defend the Jun family's dignity. But to be honest, he wasn't completely impulsive. As an excellent assassin, a gentleman doesn't stand in front of a collapsing wall. His first principle was to survive. To be honest, even though Jun Mo Xia was extremely daring, but facing the Shui Han manor, he was still a bit nervous. After all, the person behind the Shui Han manor was Li Ju Tian. The entire continent recognized him as the second most powerful person after Shen Xian. He didn't have the strength to fight against such an enemy. So, he would be fooling himself if he said that he wasn't afraid. However, fear and apprehension were meaningless when the matter came to a head. Hitman Jun didn't care about these meaningless things. What he really needed to think about was how to solve this problem. After all, the Jun family had already provoked the Silver Blizzard City. It was no less powerful than the Shui Han manor. If they couldn't deal with one, then they wouldn't be able to deal with another. So, the worst-case scenario would be this. Debts don't get anxious, lice don't get itchy. Damn it. This is nothing more than a life-and-death struggle. Jun Moxie was hot-blooded and couldn't bear the shame. However, the disparity in strength between the two sides was obvious. But since the other side couldn't be defeated, then he would have to use his wits. But where would he get his wits from? These two powerful enemies couldn't be dealt with by ordinary means. Jun Mo Xia had to consider several times before deciding on a strategy that was vague, but feasible at the present stage. After studying the level 9 Xian Dan many times, Jun Moxie discovered that the strange qi in his body, which was derived from the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune, could imitate that kind of aura in a short time. Jun Moxie had been thinking about this since that day. Jun Moxie had experimented many times after obtaining the level 6 Xian Dan. Of course, the original level 6 Xian Dan had been turned into a mess. No one could tell what kind of Xian beast this Xian Dan was. Even the energy inside had been turned into a mess by the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune, and could no longer be used. Jun Mo Xia had originally planned to wait a few days for Tang Yuan's condition to stabilize. Then, he would start the auction once Tang Yuan's injuries had healed. Then, he would throw out this Xian core, provoke a scramble, and profit from it. But now that the Shui Han manor was involved, he immediately changed his mind. The hitman Jun decided to start the plan ahead of time. Time waits for no man, and there was no time to lose. He had to improve the strength of Grandpa Jun and his third uncle Jun Wui in the shortest time possible. Only then would they have the opportunity to protect themselves in such a serious situation. Only the hardest fist would make the most sense. Chapter 179. At present, for the sake of the level 9 Xian Dan, the number of powerhouses that had come to the Tianxiang city was uncountable. Many of them were Shen Xian, and even 2 of the 8 great masters had appeared. Although each and every one of them were in a dormant state, but as long as the Xian Dan appeared, there would inevitably be chaos. In Jun Moxie's view, this kind of chaos was very advantageous to him. Perhaps they would make use of this chaotic situation, as well as the strength of their experts, in an attempt to weaken the 2 opposing forces. Jun Dashao no longer hesitated, closed his eyes, and kept his mind clear. He placed his hand on the Dan and felt the cold sensation on his fingers. In a flash, Jun Moxie activated the mystical power of the Hung Jun Pagoda. In a split second, a rich amount of spiritual chi rushed out and slowly poured into the Dan through Jun Moxie's meridians. With Jun Moxie's own cultivation, he was still unable to trigger such a huge chi field. Therefore, he had to rely on the power of the Hongjun Pagoda. In the dark room, the originally dark Xian Dan suddenly showed a dark golden luster. It lit up for a moment, and then disappeared without a trace. In an instant, a powerful energy was emitted from the Xian Dan and spread out in all directions. It's the energy of a high-level Xian Dan. What a pure energy! In the secret chamber of the magnificent Jewel Hall, 3 white-haired old men were sitting cross-legged, warming their meridians. Suddenly, the 3 of them opened their eyes, and the 9th elder in the middle blurted out. Peak level 9 Xian Dan. The 3 of them looked at each other and saw the same words in each other's eyes. Go! The 3rd elder gave the order, and the 3 of them no longer hesitated. At the same time, they leapt out like lightning. With a loud bang, a big hole was made in the roof, and the 3 of them stood at the highest point of the magnificent Jewel Hall. The sky was filled with lightning and thunder, and the sky was filled with torrential rain. The amiable 3rd elder closed his eyes and searched for a while before opening them again. His eyes flashed like lightning and his face was solemn as he shouted, "The Xian Dan has been locked onto. It's on the west side of the city." At the same time, the eyes of the other 2 people also looked towards the west side of the Tianxiang city, which was shrouded in rain. Let's go. The 3 human silhouettes flew up like big birds, flashed in the air, and disappeared without a trace. Only the big hole in the roof allowed the torrential rain to pour into it. After they left, the other 4 figures appeared at the same time. This time, it was 3 men and 1 woman. The girl said, "Hee hee, how can I miss out on such a fun thing? Let's catch up and have some fun." Before he finished speaking, he flew out as if he was afraid that someone would stop him. The other 3 looked at each other, smiled bitterly, and followed him. 2 of them were relatively close to each other, while the 3rd person was far away from them. In the Royal Guest Reception Inn, 6 human silhouettes flew out at high speed from the eastern side of the courtyard. Each of them was surrounded by a blue light as they stood solemnly outside. Then, a man in a loose robe with wide shoulders and long arms appeared in the doorway. He was almost 9 feet tall, but he was extremely thin like a bamboo pole. His face was simple and unsophisticated. Suddenly, his tall figure appeared in the middle of the crowd. Among these 7 people, 6 were Tian Xian experts. Although the remaining 1 didn't reveal his cultivation, his status was obviously higher. Such a powerful lineup. The unsophisticated man said in a low voice, "Let's go." The 7 people jumped up at the same time. At this moment, the door of the western side of the courtyard opened with a squeak, and a voice slowly said with a smile, "Brother Sure, why don't you wait for me for such a wonderful thing? Don't tell me you want to keep it all to yourself." A white figure slowly walked out of the heavy rain. The heavy rain that filled the sky actually couldn't wet his robe. He walked in the heavy rain, but it seemed like he was walking in a garden filled with fresh flowers. His every movement was elegant and calm. The imperial advisor of the Yutang Empire, Fei Mengchen. Fei Mengchen. The man in the loose robe, Leng Leng, smiled and said, "No one will stop you, as long as you are not afraid of death. You can come with me." Fei Mengchen laughed out loud, "Brother Sure, others may care about your title as one of the 8 great masters, but you should know what kind of person I am." This tall man in the loose robe was one of the 8 great masters, Shi Changshao of the Shenxi Empire. Shi Changshao smiled coldly and didn't say anything else. He waved his sleeves and flew up like he was riding on a cloud. He made a turn in the air and changed his direction, heading towards the west of the city with extreme speed. Fei Mengchen laughed and chased after him. The rest of the people didn't say a word and just followed behind them. In the pub, Solitary Eagle's mouth was full of the smell of alcohol. He laughed and said, "Good wine. Really good wine." He and the prince came to be the witness, but they were stopped by the good wine. When they wanted to leave, it was already raining heavily. If man doesn't keep man, heaven will keep man. However, with the good wine accompanying him, he didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Moreover, he was used to drifting, so he was at ease with the situation. At this moment, he had wine to drink with, and someone to drink with, so he felt good. By now, the 2 small jars of wine that June Moxie brought had already been emptied. He reluctantly drank Old Song's wine again. He had trained his whole life, but found out that he did not even have the qualifications to participate in a battle that was so close to him. How sad was that? At the same time, 4 directions. In the north, 3 figures moved like lightning. They were the 3 elders of Blizzard's Silver City, Shin Xian, and Blizzard 3, 6, 9, and 9. Dongfang, Li Yuran, and the 10 brothers of Li Yuran were running at top speed, and each of them had a determined look on their faces. In the south, one of the 8 great masters, Shi Changshao, and the imperial advisor of the Yutang Empire, Fei Mengchen, were leading the way. Behind them, there were 6 or 7 figures of sky blue Xian Qi, cutting through the curtain of rain. In the west, Solitary Eagle flew like a goshawk, and his black robes made a hissing sound in the air, showing his speed. There was only one target, and that was the dilapidated wooden hut that was emitting the aura of the level 9 Xian Dan. Supreme Shin Xian's divine sense had locked onto the hut, and it was not the slightest bit off. In the distance, there were many yellow and blue lights flashing in the curtain of rain, like a bunch of small lanterns, flickering in the distance like will-o'-the-wisps, and slowly approaching. This man is really stupid, trying to activate the Xian Dan on a rainy night. Doesn't he know that no matter how heavy the rain is, it can't stop the fluctuation of the Xian Dan's aura? Could it be that this is a trap that has been set up for a long time? In the north, the white-haired and white-bearded 3rd elder was in the middle. Even though he was running at such a high speed, he was still able to speak, and his aura was not the slightest bit chaotic. At least the Xian Dan is real. The aura from before was undoubtedly that of a high-level Xian Dan, and this can't be faked. As for whether there's an ambush, it's still unknown. The 6th elder's expression was solemn, and the 3 of them were confidently trying to detect something as they ran, but so far, they had not found anything. The aura of that super-strong master hasn't appeared, and there's no sign of him rushing over here. The 9th elder's voice still had a trace of lingering fear. He had collided with that legendary strong master, with his divine sense, and he still felt a chill run down his spine, and his heart still had a lingering fear. 3rd brother, there's one thing that I still don't understand. With this senior's strength, he should have already escaped. Before the 9th elder could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by the 3rd elder. Don't say those 2 words. The 3rd elder's voice was hurried, and he seemed to be very anxious. Yes, yes. The 9th elder also knew that he had made a slip of the tongue, and he quickly agreed. Everyone has their own aspirations, and this point can't be forced. After the 3rd elder finished speaking, the 3 of them didn't say a word, and continued to advance at high speed. Chapter 180. There are also people coming from the east, but their strength. The 6th elder looked at Dong Fang and said coldly, the strongest among them is only Tian Xian's cultivation. He's overestimating his own capabilities. He won't be able to cause any trouble for the 3rd elder. Let's go to the south. The 3rd elder nodded slightly. He spread his arms, and his speed doubled. With a schwa sound, he broke away and flew away like a meteor. The 6th and 9th elders' white beards fluttered in the wind as they suddenly changed directions in the pouring rain. The 6th elder suddenly shouted, 3,000 miles of ice, the Silver City is forged by the wind and snow. Are you sure Changxiao Shi and Fei Mengchen brother Fei? Shi Changxiao's meteor-like figure suddenly stopped in midair. He looked expressionlessly at the 2 elders of the Silver Blizzard City. So it's you. Fei Mengchen also stopped and laughed. It's a small world. I didn't expect to meet the 3rd, 6th and 9th elders of the Silver Blizzard City here. It's really an honor to meet you. Shi Changshao was a cautious man, so when he saw that only 2 of the Silver City's 3, 6, and 9 elders had appeared, he quickly judged that the other elder must have gone to seize the Xian core. This sentence was both a greeting and a reminder to Shi Changshao. Although the Xian core had fallen into the hands of the 2 of them, but they couldn't allow the Silver Blizzard City's people to take advantage of this situation. After all, the 3 elders of the Silver Blizzard City had already reached the Spirit Xian realm, and although they could easily defeat any one of them in a one-on-one fight, their overall strength was still far behind. After all, the other party had 3 people on their side. Shi Changshao nodded slightly. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were faintly glowing as he looked at the 2 elders who were blocking his way. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. What are you 2 planning to do? The 9th elder chuckled and said, no matter what, we are all old friends. If the 2 of you have something urgent, you might as well say it. Perhaps we brothers can also help out a little. You think you can stop me? Shi Changshao sneered. Even if Han Feng Shui were here, he wouldn't dare to say that. How dare you? Although they were all Supreme Shenxian, Shi Changshao was one of the 8 great Supremes. His Xian cultivation was already at the advanced stage of Supreme Shenxian. On the other hand, Silver City's 3, 6, 9 was only at the initial stage of Shenxian. Even the strongest among them, the 3rd elder, was only at the peak of the initial stage of Shenxian. The gap between the 2 was huge. Shi Changshao was naturally qualified to say this. For Han Feng Shui to have the 2 of you practicing this set of cold wind flying snow sword technique to such an extent, the title of Supreme Feng Shui is not in vain. Both of his palms moved back and forth, and the snowflakes that filled the sky couldn't even touch his body. Brother Shi is right. That's why our governor can be ranked in the top 3 among the 8 great masters. The 6th elder used all his strength to move his sword. His body was erratic, and the sword lights burst out in clusters. How dare you? Shi Changshao shouted, and he was already angry. The 6th elder was clearly saying that he was far behind Zhu Han Feng Shui. Although in reality, he was indeed far behind, but to say it like this, Shi Changshao, who was also a supreme martial artist, still felt a little embarrassed. His body spun in the air, like a giant bat, and strangely froze in the air. Suddenly, Shi Changxiao's body moved from the stillness, and shadows spread out from his motionless body. This scene was extremely strange, as if there were countless Shi Changxiaos in the sky at the same time, and they stood in a row, filling up the sky. Woo! With a strange sound, the countless Shi Changxiaos in the air all fell down with a loud bang, and smashed the snowflakes that filled the sky. At the same time, Fei Mengchen let out a long shout, and swept past the 6th elder like lightning, rushing towards the shabby house without looking back. The timing was just right. At this moment, if the 6th elder and the 9th elder chose to stop Fei Mengchen's advance, they would definitely die under the palm of Shi Changshao. Without a choice, the 2 of them could only watch as Fei Mengchen forced her way through, and they still had to deal with Shi Changxiao's killer with all their might. Jun Moxie stood alone in the house, and his powerful spirit sense was closely observing everything around him. Suddenly, his pupils shrank, and his body rushed out of the house with a swoosh. He had just come out when a big hole was smashed open in the house with a loud bang, and a white-haired old man rushed out with him. Behind him, the house swayed a little, and then collapsed with a loud bang. The 3rd elder fixed his eyes on the Xian Dan in Jun Moxie's hand, and smiled amiably, and said indifferently, "Your Excellency, an ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. The Xian Dan is something that you shouldn't have, and it's better to hand it over to this old man for safekeeping. This old man will protect your life, and 1 Xian Dan in exchange for 1 life, that's very fair." Is it really fair? The Xian Dan and my life belong to me, how can you protect it? There are so many experts in Tianxiang City, how can you guarantee that you will protect my life? Jun Moxie's face was a little nervous, and he was cursing in his heart, why is there only one? Where the F***K are the rest of them? Is there something wrong with my simulation of the Xian Dan's energy? His mouth was rambling, but his heart was already on high alert, because the person in front of him was a genuine great master, Shen Xian. He believed that as long as he raised his hand, the Xian Dan would most likely fall into his hands in an instant. Did this old man really take advantage of this situation? Why the F***K are the others so slow? However, Jun Mo Xia was wrong. The third elder didn't want to make a move, but rather, he was worried that the strength of the person who had obtained the Xian core wouldn't be simple. Otherwise, he would have been able to arrive at this place at lightning speed, and yet the person inside the room was able to escape a step ahead of him. Even if he could kill this boy with a wave of his hand, he might not necessarily be able to preserve the Xian core. If he were to act rashly and cause the Xian core to be damaged, then the gains would not make up for the losses. This old man is the third elder of the Silver Blizzard City, and I believe that I still have some credibility. As long as you hand over the Xian Dan, this old man can guarantee that you will be able to leave this place safely. The third elder took a step forward and smiled. The third elder was a master of Shen Xian, and he had quickly judged that the strength of the person in front of him wasn't very high, and as long as he took a step forward, he would be able to restrain this person. However, since he couldn't rely on his strength, he could only rely on his wits. Jun Moxie was waiting for a melee, and definitely wasn't going to recklessly fight with the great master, Shen Xian. That would be tantamount to courting death. Therefore, Jun Moxie had to delay the others no matter what. Until then, he couldn't afford to lose. Suddenly, the hitman's body began to emit a green Xian qi, and as he stood in the rain, his whole body looked like a large piece of dazzling jade. PQ Xian. Haha, it's still not enough. The third elder shook his head and said regretfully. In his heart, he was even more confident that the person in front of him was only a small jade Xian. Such a person could be considered a good expert in the eyes of ordinary people, or even in the eyes of the Tianxiang city, but in the eyes of Shen Xian, he was just a joke. Moreover, it was a joke of an ant. He had been too careful before, and now that he had determined the opponent's strength, he didn't have any interest in talking nonsense with him, and was about to directly snatch the Xian Dan. The third elder was confident that he would be able to take the Xian Dan as soon as he made his move, and that person wouldn't be able to destroy the Xian Dan even if he wanted to. But at this moment, he suddenly discovered something extremely strange. And it was this matter that caused him to stop in his tracks just as he was about to make his move. Because the green Xian qi on Jun Moxie's body suddenly disappeared, and was replaced by a light yellow color, and then in the blink of an eye, it turned into an earthy yellow, and then a golden yellow. Finally, it turned into a bright yellow. It was brilliant and dazzling, and the rain in the sky seemed magnificent and gorgeous, like a dream, noble and elegant. What's going on? Why did the radiance of the Xian qi suddenly change from the peak of Yu Xian to the peak of Earth Xian? The third elder had traveled extensively for decades, but this was the first time he had seen such a bizarre thing. This was simply subverting the iron rules of Xian qi cultivation. How did this guy do it? Chapter 181. Today's second update has arrived. Now work hard on the third update. Seeking monthly votes. Once the Xian qi had been cultivated to a certain level, it would naturally stabilize. As long as one didn't advance, the color of the Xian qi would never change. After advancing, although one could suppress their own strength, they still wouldn't be able to emit the color of Xian qi of a lower realm. For example, even if a Tian Xian expert acted tough, he wouldn't be able to emit the color of Earth Xian qi. This was a definite thing. There was only one way to change the color of the Xian qi: advancement. This was an irreversible process. But who had ever seen a person advance from the Jade Xian to the Earth Xian level, and then break through the Earth Xian low level, mid level, high level, and finally to the Earth Xian peak level in a short period of time? As long as one had a normal brain, they wouldn't believe that such a thing could happen. But now, this miracle that no one could believe had happened right in front of the eyes of the third elder, the supreme Shenxian. Even though he had seen it with his own eyes, the third elder couldn't help but rub his eyes subconsciously. This isn't a fucking dream, is it? But it doesn't matter. So what if he's really at the Earth Xian peak? Don't tell me you can defeat me, a supreme divine Xian expert. The third elder comforted himself and shouted, "Kid, don't play tricks and deliberately mystify things. It's useless. Take the Xian Dan," he wanted to say, "Give it to me, Xian Dan." But just as he said the word, give, he swallowed the remaining two words due to extreme shock. Damn it, has this world gone crazy? Or is this old man's eyes blurred? Just as he was rubbing his eyes, the bright yellow Xian Qi that represented the strength of the Earth Xian peak disappeared from the black-clothed man in front of him. Instead, it was replaced by a layer of elegant light blue. The light blue continued to expand, slowly turning into a medium blue, then sky blue, dark blue, and finally the azure color of the sea. Tian Xian Peak. The third elder almost had the urge to fall to the ground. In the time it took for him to fart, and even if he did fart, he could not smell the stench. This kid actually advanced from the peak of Yu Xian to the peak of Tian Xian. It was a total of 9 ranks. Holy shit! Could this guy in black be a ghost? Just as he thought of this, something even more shocking happened to the third elder. The color of the azure ocean disappeared from the guy in front of him. This time, no other color appeared. However, the paler it was, the more surprised the third elder was. Did the masked man in black enter the realm of Shenxian? He looked at the color of the black-clothed man in front of him in bewilderment. He saw that this mysterious man's eyes, which were a little impatient at the beginning, were now calm and composed. Slowly, he became calmer. The way he looked at him changed from indifference to pity, and then to contempt. Now, what the third elder saw was Jun Moxie's eyes hidden behind the mask. The third elder felt that this pair of sharp eyes was full of arrogance, as if he had the power of life and death in his hands. This was the gaze of the supremacy of Shenxian. It was even sharper than that of Shi Changshao, or even his city lord, Han Feng Shui. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! The third elder shook his head. What on earth happened? At this moment, Fei Mengchen let out a clear whistle and landed from the sky. She stood in a triangular formation with Jun Moxie and the third elder. 3 people, 3 points. If one were to measure it, it would be an equilateral triangle. As the imperial advisor of the Yutang Empire, Fei Mengchen was very cautious by nature. When she saw that the third elder of Blizzard's Silver City and this black-clothed man seemed to be in a standoff, she could not help but have many doubts. Could it be that this black-clothed man was actually an expert who was comparable to Shenxian? That even the third elder of Blizzard's Silver City was so afraid that he did not dare to act rashly. Thus, the 3 of them stood there, and no one was willing to make the first move. If Fei Mengchen had not come just now, the third elder would have reluctantly made a move even if his heart was beating like a drum. Even if the opponent was an expert like Shenxian, he would at most have a hard time getting his hands on him. And once he made a move, he would be able to snatch away the Xian Dan. This was because the person in front of them, who seemed to be even stronger than the supreme Shenxian, was no stronger than an ant. But now that Fei Mengchen had come, the 2 of them did not dare to make a move. The third elder had sold the vest to Fei Mengchen. Moreover, the person in front of them was such a mysterious and unfathomable person. If they were to be attacked from the front and the back, it would be hard for them not to die. This situation was really unlucky, and extremely embarrassing. Fei Mengchen naturally had the same concerns as the third elder, but her thoughts were one level deeper than the third elder's. She knew that if someone could obtain the Xian Dan, how could he be an ordinary person? Look, I'm in trouble now. Even the third elder of Blizzard's Silver City did not dare to act rashly. Why was I in such a hurry just now? Why didn't I wait for Shi Changshao to come along? I really regret it. Damn it, I was caught in the middle of a pincer attack as soon as I landed on the ground. 2 Xinxians, what is this called? Damn it, I'm so unlucky. Among the three of them, only Jun Moxie was bluffing. It seemed that only the hitman Jun had the means to escape unscathed. The Xian Dan was simply a waste Dan. Moreover, it had the yin-yang escape, and could escape at any time. But in his heart, he was still cursing the 2 Xinxians, Solitary Eagle and Shi Changshao. Damn it, why haven't those two come yet? You're all here so that I can throw the Xian Dan out. Then I'll hide and watch the show. I'll get rich in silence. I despise you 2 great masters. You're actually part of the 8 great masters, but you're not as fast as the ordinary Xinxians. But now, these 2 old men are blocking me from the front and the back. This feeling is not good. I don't even dare to move a finger. If I move, I'll expose myself. And if I expose myself, I'll have to leave immediately. But what about this plan? I'm so unlucky. I've calculated everything correctly. But I didn't expect that even a battle maniac like Solitary Eagle and Shi Changshao would be late. The three of them stared at each other. None of their hands and feet were tied, but none of them moved. They really didn't move at all. The three of them were standing tall and straight. They had the demeanor of a peerless expert. However, they were restraining each other. None of them was willing to be the first one to take the lead. Jun Moxie could feel cold sweat dripping down his back. Luckily, there was a heavy downpour. Otherwise, these 2 old men in front of him would have been able to see through his disguise. This expert of mine is a fake after all. Finally, 2 muffled groans came from afar. Then, there were 2 sounds of something breaking. Then, a terrifying Qi pressed down from the sky. Shi Changxiao's voice came from afar, Brother Fei, you've missed a golden opportunity. This Xian Dan is mine. Before his voice died away, Shi Changxiao's black figure had already appeared in midair. His black cloak fluttered in the wind and rain. It seemed as if he had caught the heavy downpour. Ha ha ha. Shi Changshao, it's too early for you to be happy. This Xian Dan is what I want. An unruly voice resounded. It sounded like the sound of metal clashing against each other. It was so loud that it made one's blood boil. It was an unspeakable discomfort. A black figure flew at a low altitude. It looked like a goshawk hunting for food. His figure was elegant. His eyes were cruel. His face was lonely. He had a look of disdain on his face. He looked like a king. Another one of the 8 great masters. The god of the grassland, Solitary Eagle. Shi Changzhao's complexion changed as he accelerated his descent, but the solitary falcon was much faster than him in terms of agility, and was the first to land on the ground. The 2 men looked at each other from a distance, and their eyes were indifferent as they stared at each other. However, the light radiating from their eyes seemed even more shocking than the lightning in the sky. The 6th and 9th elders of the Silver Blizzard City landed with 2 whooshing sounds. Each of them held a broken sword in their hands. Their complexions were pale, but they weren't seriously injured. They landed behind the 3rd elder. The 3 of them stood shoulder to shoulder. The strength of the 3rd, 6th, and 9th elders wasn't any weaker than that of Great Master Xinxian. Another 6 people broke through the curtain of rain, and stood behind Shi Changshao. They were Shi Changxiao's subordinates. It seemed that not everyone had arrived yet, so, the seniors were already here. This junior Lei Jianhong pays his respects to the seniors of the Silver Blizzard City. He pays his respects to Uncle Shi and Uncle Eagle. I would like to convey my greetings to the seniors on behalf of my master. A white-clothed middle-aged man slowly walked out from the darkness. He was accompanied by 9 other white-clothed men. These were Li Yuren's 10 fellow disciples. This wasn't surprising. They were the weakest among the group. So, they were the last to arrive. Strange. What's the relationship between me and Lei Wubei? His disciple calls me uncle. Where did that come from? Solitary Eagle rolled his eyes. Leng Gleng said. Shi Changshao, don't tell me that you and Lei Wubei are fellow disciples. Lei Wubei. Li Yuran and the others were the disciples of Lei Wubei, the fifth of the 8 great masters. Bald Eagle. What nonsense are you talking about? Shi Changshao rolled his eyes. You may have a grudge against Lei Wubei, but a junior is greeting you. Why do you have such an attitude? Don't you have the demeanor of senior Shenxian? How can I be on the same level as a bastard like you? Bah! I have a bad temper. You don't need to teach me a lesson. Solitary Eagle snorted twice. Then, he looked at the 10 people and said, You juniors. Don't try to curry favor with me. Your words are useless. Since you've come here, you've certainly come for the Xian core. Not to mention calling him martial uncle, even if you kowtow 9 times, your martial uncle sure will not give you the Xian core. So, you'd better prepare to fight. Didn't you see that your Uncle Shi's eyes turned red when he saw the Xian Dan? In fact, you dare to join in the fun with your meager strength? I have to look at you with new eyes. Lei Jianhong had already cursed the 18 generations of Solitary Eagle's ancestors in his heart. But, he still smiled and said, Senior, you are right. Since Solitary Eagle didn't want to acknowledge their friendship, he didn't call him uncle anymore. My little grandaunt, this kind of scene, the 3 of us old bones are almost overwhelmed. How can you come? Wouldn't that be asking for our lives? The silver snakes were dancing in the sky, and the faces of the people in the field were bright and dark. Shi Changxiao's gaze passed through the people in the field, and directly fixed on Solitary Eagle's face. Bald Eagle, do you want this Xian Dan? There were many experts in the field, but there was only one person who could truly threaten this great master of life and death, Solitary Eagle. As long as he could convince Solitary Eagle, then the Xian Dan would be his. As for the other people, even the 3 elders of the Silver Blizzard City, Shen Xian's cultivation, Shi Changshao still didn't care about them. Nonsense. The level 9 Xian Dan is a rarity. Is it strange for me to want it? Don't you want it? Then, why did you come here in the rain? Solitary Eagle sneered, Shi Changshao. I'm very dissatisfied with you. I came all the way here to fight you, and you're so fucking arrogant. Today, I'm going to fight you to my heart's content. Shi Changshao was infuriated. I'm not a battle maniac like you. What's the point of fighting a meaningless fight? You're one of the 8 great masters, but why are you acting like a scoundrel? Besides, you should have picked a good time to fight. Why are you dragging me to fight at this juncture? Isn't that the same as making me look good? What about the Xian Dan? For a moment, this world-famous great master of life and death's heart was filled with depression. Who wants the Xian Dan? Whoever wants the Xian Dan is going against me. Solitary Eagle laughed out loud, and looked around disdainfully. He let out a long roar, and was full of vigor and enthusiasm. Damn it, there were 5 great masters in the field, and Shen Xian could finally fight to his heart's content. Solitary Eagle, if you miss this opportunity, I'll fight you anytime you want. Shi Changxiao's face was cold and expressionless. The light in his eyes seemed to have opened up a path in the dense rain, and fixed on Solitary Eagle's face. We all know that your target has never been the Xian Dan. Why don't you give me some face? Bullsh *T. My target is the Xian Dan. I have nothing to do with you, so why should I give you any face? I want to fight with you today. What can you do to me? Solitary Eagle and Shi Changshao were separated by 7 or 8 feet, and he didn't show any weakness. In terms of Xian Qi cultivation, although both of them were among the 8 great masters, Solitary Eagle's strength was slightly inferior to Shi Changxiao's. However, if the two of them were to fight, as long as it wasn't a life-and-death battle, it would be impossible to determine the winner without more than 1,000 moves. Today, as long as Solitary Eagle was determined to tangle with Shi Changxiao, it would be useless even if Shi Changxiao was angered to death, or risked his life. Shen Xian was a supreme master, and he was not someone that could be killed by a human. Even if 2 or more people of the same level attacked one of them, it would be impossible for the other person to win, but it would not be a problem for the other person to escape. In the process of fighting for the Xian Dan, the opportunity was fleeting. Not to mention 1,000 moves, even a gap of 1 or 2 moves would be enough to cause one to miss the opportunity to obtain the Xian Dan. Fei Mengchen, the Silver Blizzard City's 3 great masters, Shen Xian, which one of them wasn't eyeing him covetously? Even the surrounding Tian Xian experts might not be in the eyes of the Shen Xian experts, but which one of them was easy to deal with? Whooshing sounds could be heard from afar, and shadows could be seen coming from all directions. It was no longer limited to Shen Xian and Tian Xian experts, Earth Xian experts, Yu Xian experts, and even some Golden Xian experts were present. However, seeing that there were so many people gathered here, and that there was no lack of top-notch experts among them, the people who had arrived later carefully stood on the periphery and observed the movements here. They did not move forward, nor did they leave. It was obvious that they were planning to grab a hot cake with cold hands, and had forgotten about their own strength. Solitary Eagle's arrogant eyes looked through the curtain of rain, and swept across everyone, regardless of their distance. Suddenly, he looked up to the sky, and let out a long roar. His roar sounded like rolling thunder in the sky, and it seemed as if the 9th heaven's thunder was crashing down, and pounding on everyone's hearts. Some of the weaker people in the periphery felt their blood churning as they heard the long roar. More than 10 people couldn't help but spurt out blood from their nostrils, and their faces turned deathly pale. I am Solitary Eagle. My opponent is Shi Changxiao. Solitary Eagle laughed fiercely. There are many people in this world who overestimate their own capabilities. Be sensible, and get out of my sight. A few indistinct cries of alarm could be heard from the periphery. As the saying goes, a man's name is like a tree's shadow. Who would have thought that the legendary 8 great masters would appear in the Tianxiang city? Moreover, 2 of them had appeared at the same time. Snatching the Xian Dan from the hands of these 2 people. What's the difference between that and courting death? Several people sighed sadly, turned around, and disappeared into the curtain of rain. They had withdrawn from the fight for the Xian Dan. However, most of them only retreated a few feet, and then stopped moving. So what if you're the great master Shen Xian? I'll wait until you and Shi Changxiao are both injured, and then I'll be able to take advantage of you. The law doesn't punish the masses, and even if you're the great master Shen Xian, can you kill everyone here? There were definitely a lot of people who had this idea. Is that Solitary Eagle? One of the 8 great masters of the continent. How can he be so fierce? He's not as peaceful as my father. My father is much better. The cute girl stuck out her tongue and spoke in a mischievous manner. Mu Shuatong stood beside her, and sighed. He smiled bitterly and said, "Little princess, you really shouldn't have come this time. The scene here is too big. Mu Shuatong, don't you have the confidence to protect the little princess?" Xiao Han smiled strangely. If you're so afraid of the slightest thing, then leave the responsibility of protecting the little princess to me, you coward. Mu Shuatong snorted and said, Solitary Eagle and Shi Changxiao are both here. If our Silver Blizzard City manages to obtain the Xian Dan, then it will certainly arouse the hostility of these 2 people. I believe that even the 3 elders of the Silver Blizzard City may not be able to escape unscathed, let alone us. Xiao Han, have you been kicked in the head by a donkey? Don't you see how many experts are here? Do you really think that you're superior to others just because you've advanced to the Tian Xian realm? You're just a frog at the bottom of a well. Mu Shuetong's words were reasonable. Earth Xian experts were as numerous as dogs, and the Tian Xian experts were everywhere. And Shen Xian experts were everywhere. So, if a war were to break out in this place, then the situation would certainly be very tragic. Not to mention that Xiao Han was a beginner of the Tian Xian realm, but even the 3rd, 6th, and 9th elders of the Shen Xian realm wouldn't necessarily be able to escape unscathed. And, if even the experts of the Shen Xian realm were to face such a situation, then what about the others? Xiao Han was furious. He was about to retort when a sharp gaze suddenly shot towards him. He couldn't help but feel his heart palpitate, and he eventually swallowed his words. That was because the person who had turned to look at him was none other than the revered master of this generation, Shi Changshao. The current situation was extremely delicate. The Xian Dan was in Jun Dashao's hands. And, with Jun Dashao as the center, there were 3 layers of small encirclement. But, all of them were experts. And, the lowest cultivation level among them was actually at the Tian Xian realm. Moreover, there were more than 10 layers of encirclement outside the encirclement. The strength of the outermost layer might not be high, but the number of people was considerable. This was a luxurious and extravagant lineup. It was believed that even Yunbi Chen, the number 1 revered master in the world, would have a headache if he had been in Jun Moxie's position. But, no one dared to make a move in this formidable lineup. Who would dare to make a move when 2 revered masters were confronting each other? It was in a delicate balance. And, this balance was something that Jun Dashao couldn't tolerate. He had to break it. Chapter 183. Lei Wubei's 10 disciples were waiting outside. They were waiting for the Silver Blizzard City, Shi Changshao, Solitary Eagle, and the others to make their move. They would immediately take action as soon as these people made their move. They would fight for the Xian Dan, and then flee far away. They certainly didn't have the strength to contend with Great Master Shen Xian. But, they could rely on their combined strength to create a gap. Once the Xian Dan was successfully obtained, they would be able to flee far away. The 3 elders of the Silver Blizzard City had the same idea. They were waiting for Solitary Eagle and Shi Changshao to make their move. They wouldn't be able to take care of anything for a short period of time once these 2 enemies made their move. Only Fei Mengchen would be a threat at that time. But, there were 3 of them. So, their odds of success would naturally be greater. Fei Mengchen, the imperial preceptor of the Yutang Empire, had her hands tucked into her sleeves. Her eyes were slightly closed, and she looked calm. It seemed as if she didn't have anything to do with this situation. She seemed to be conserving her strength in order to strike a decisive blow. Shi Changshao was caught in a dilemma. He could be said to be the strongest person here. And, he had as many as 7 experts to help him in battle. But he was deeply aware that it was precisely because his side was the strongest that he had become the center of attention. If he didn't make the first move, then this delicate balance could still be maintained. But if he made a move, then it would surely be followed by a fierce battle, a chaotic battle. But, Solitary Eagle was present. Shi Changshao was certain that he would win in such a chaotic battle. But, he wouldn't be able to snatch the Xian Dan. What was the point of him coming here if he couldn't snatch the Xian Dan? He wasn't here for a vacation. Moreover, there were many experts in this place. So, he wouldn't be in any danger in case of a chaotic battle. But, what about his subordinates? Their strength was extraordinary, and they could take charge of an area on their own. But, there were too many experts in this place. If all of them died here, even if they managed to obtain the Xian Dan, it might not be worth it. On the other hand, Solitary Eagle didn't have as many scruples as he did. He wasn't here for Xian Dan at all. He was all alone and had the advantage of being able to leave at any time. This battle maniac was probably itching to fight against so many powerful opponents in front of him. The more Shi Changshao thought about it, the more he felt a headache. He even thought that it would have been better if he hadn't come to seize the Xian Dan. The other supreme martial artist, Shen Xian, Solitary Eagle, was also lost in his thoughts. The reason why these people had gathered here was naturally not to fight with him. If someone were to make the first move, perhaps they would be able to instantly seize the Xian Dan from the hands of that black-clothed fellow. At that time, it would be a long battle of pursuit, and Shi Changshao would surely abandon him to seize the Xian Dan. At that time, he would inevitably lose his original purpose of coming here. For a moment, there were many people present, and all of them were experts. However, no one was willing to make the first move. A hoarse and cold voice rang out, "Motherfucker, all of you only know how to pose here. Are you all fucking wooden blocks? If you want to fight, then hurry up. It's raining so heavily that I'm about to catch a cold. You're even more indecisive than a woman. If you have a torch, then hurry up and fight." Everyone was enraged. Who was this audacious person? This sentence had offended everyone who could be offended, and everyone who couldn't be offended. This person was really too gutsy. Everyone's gazes instantly focused on the source of the voice. This time, they were even more astonished. It turned out that the black-clothed fellow who was at the center of the voice was abnormally agitated. He was waving his hands and feet, and his fingers were pointing at the noses of the 8 great supreme martial artists and supreme martial artist, Shen Xian. This person was really too gutsy. Who was this person? It was obvious that he could lose the Xian Dan at any time, but he still dared to take the initiative to provoke them. Should it be said that he was audacious and ignorant, or too stupid? Shut up! More than 5 or 6 people shouted angrily at the same time. Bastard! Is there any room for a junior like you to speak here? The Solitary Eagle's temper was the most violent. His body flashed, and he arrived in front of the black-masked man like a ghost. He then fiercely slapped his palm towards his face. I must teach this sharp-tongued guy a lesson. He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The Silver Blizzard City's 3rd elder nervously opened his eyes wide. The battle was bound to start because of this slap from the Solitary Eagle. Others might not know, but how could the Silver Blizzard City's 3rd elder not know? The black-clothed man in front of him was by no means a simple character. Even if the Solitary Eagle was one of the 8 great supreme martial artists, it wouldn't be easy for him to take down this black-masked man. In fact, he might even suffer a loss if he were to underestimate the enemy. This black-clothed man was very likely to be a Shen Xian. Moreover, it was a very high-level Shen Xian expert. The 3rd elder's heart was filled with a heartfelt shock as he recalled the strange ability to change the color of his Xian Qi at will. What kind of realm must one's Xian Qi be cultivated to in order to have such a performance? Even the Silver Blizzard City's Lord Han Fei Shui, who was one of the top 3 great supreme martial artists in Shen Xian, wasn't able to reach such a level. Humph, but the Solitary Falcon is an arrogant and conceited old man, and the Silver Blizzard City has always been at loggerheads with him. So, it's very pleasing to see him suffer or make a fool of himself. So, the 3rd elder naturally wouldn't remind him. He was waiting for the Solitary Eagle to be surprised and make a fool of himself. But what happened next? The mysterious black-clothed man dodged in an abnormally panicked manner and leaped up again. Pa! A crisp sound was heard as the Solitary Eagle's slap landed squarely on his chest. The black-masked man screamed, "Ah! I!" His body was sent flying far away like a kite with a broken string. He was panic-stricken as he shouted in midair, "Help, spare my life." Everyone was taken aback. Everyone's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. What's going on? Such a daring and imposing expert was actually calling for help. The most inconceivable thing was that the Xian core in the masked man's right hand had suddenly slipped out of the masked man's hand, and had fallen into the Solitary Falcon's right palm, which hadn't yet been able to retract. The Solitary Eagle felt a huge and exceptionally pure aura suddenly fall on his hand. He subconsciously closed his fingers and caught the Xian Dan in his palm. He didn't expect that his slap would actually work. This black-masked man had a level 9 Xian Dan in his hand. He was also able to remain so calm in the midst of so many top-notch experts. He even dared to scold Shi Changshao and himself. How could he be an ordinary person? He might even be a powerful expert. To be honest, the solitary falcon hadn't been looking for the Xian core from the very beginning, but rather to fight with him. In fact, the solitary falcon hadn't even looked down on him in the slightest, and had given him a very high evaluation. Therefore, the solitary eagle's slap contained countless moves. He was sure that no matter how the black-masked man responded, he would be able to launch a smoother attack. This slap, whether it was the technique or the position, was a masterpiece. However, compared to the brilliant follow-up move, the opening palm strike was far inferior. It was very crude. However, the black-robed masked man whom he had taken a liking to was so vulnerable. There was no need to use any of the exquisite follow-up moves. The masked man was sent flying with just one slap. Even after the black-masked man had been sent flying for a long time, the solitary eagle was still in a daze. Wasn't this too unexpected? I'm looking for a good opponent, there's no point in using this thing. Raising his hand in a daze, the solitary eagle looked at the Xian Dan in his palm with a complicated expression. He looked at this unexpected windfall that fell into his hands. After a while, he said, fuck. Among all the people present, there was only one person who didn't come for the Xian Dan. This person was naturally the prairie eagle god, Solitary Eagle. However, it was beyond everyone's expectations. It was as if fate had played a big joke on everyone. The person who didn't want to get it the most had actually gotten it. Furthermore, he had succeeded so easily. Even Shi Changshao, a great grandmaster, had his mouth wide open in shock at this turn of events. No one would have thought that the black-masked man was just a wax spearhead that looked like silver. He wasn't even as good as a wax spearhead. At least the wax spearhead had a melting process. How could he be so weak like this? The one who got it was one of the 8 great masters. Especially the solitary eagle, who was famous for his movement skills among the 8 great masters. If he wanted to leave, even if Shi Changshao tried his best to stop him, it would be useless. Now, almost everyone's intestines were about to break. Naturally, they didn't dare to attack the solitary eagle rashly. They weren't Shi Changshao. If they wanted to challenge the solitary eagle, they would be courting death. Therefore, they were all searching for the black-masked man's shadow. If they found that guy, they would swarm him and beat him to a pulp in an instant. That way, they could vent their anger. Damn it! Why are you pretending to be 13 if you don't have the strength? You made me miss a good opportunity. I can't do anything to the divine eagle, but you think I can't take care of you? A thing that's even softer than a wax spearhead. However, when the group of people looked in the direction where the black-robed masked man was sent flying, it was quiet. Quietly, the black-robed masked man had actually disappeared into thin air. Could it be that this kid was made of paper? Or a pile of ash? Could it be that he broke into pieces with just a touch? A living person had suddenly disappeared in front of the eyes of 2 great masters, 4 great masters, Xin Xian, nearly 20 Tian Xian experts, and countless pairs of Xian Qi experts. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. It was as if the solitary eagle's palm had turned him into thin air. Slap! Another crisp sound rang out. Everyone had yet to recover from the shock. They subconsciously looked in the direction of the sound. It was the 3rd elder of the Silver Blizzard City. This great master, Xin Xian, had raised his palm and slapped his own face. Very crisp, very pleasant, very loud, and very pleasing to the ear. What's going on? The 6th elder and the 9th elder stepped forward and asked with concern, "Third brother, what's wrong?" The relationship between the 3rd elder, the 6th elder, and the 9th elder had always been very good. There's a mosquito. The third elder said awkwardly. Everyone was so shocked that they almost fainted. It was late autumn, and there was such a heavy downpour. Even an eagle would be drenched. How could there be a mosquito? What kind of mosquito could be so domineering? Little did they know that the third elder was extremely regretful. Chapter 184. So that fellow really is nothing. I was alone earlier, and I only needed to stretch out my hand to snatch the Xian Dan, and then immediately escape back to Blizzard's Silver City. My goal this time was to succeed. But he had been fooled by that guy's tricks. I said, how could an expert have so many Xian Qi lights at the same time? This doesn't make sense. How could I have been fooled? I'm really the biggest idiot in the world. I sigh. Just as the third elder was lamenting over his own actions, the experts and Xin Xian were all looking at the solitary eagle as if they were facing a formidable enemy. They were afraid that the solitary eagle would suddenly leave. If he were to use all his strength to bring the Xian Dan far away, no one would be able to catch up with him. Even Shi Changshao could only watch. Shi Changshao let out a long and furious roar, and suddenly leaped into the air like a dragon soaring through the fog, and a crane dancing in the 9 heavens. With incomparable sharpness, he descended like a hurricane. Bald eagle. Don't you want to fight? Let's decide who's the stronger one. Let's fight. As his figure descended, the raindrops in the air were sent flying in all directions by his powerful qi. Like iron marbles, they fell on the faces and bodies of those who saw them, causing a dull pain. Shi Changxiao's tall figure seemed to have transformed into a 1,000-armed devil in mid-air, and it seemed as if he was going to destroy the world. The solitary eagle laughed heartily, and even took the Xian Dan into his arms. Come on. He spread his arms, and soared into the air like an eagle. His tall and sturdy body shot forward like an arrow, and his long black hair suddenly fluttered in the wind. Such a posture made it seem as if he was going to dominate the world. The two supreme martial artists were finally confronting each other head-on. Fei Mengchen, the Silver Blizzard City's 3rd, 6th, and 9th elders, the 6 Tian Xian experts that Shi Changshao had brought with him, and Lei Wubei's 10 disciples leapt into the air at this moment. Their shadows flashed, and strong winds overflowed in all directions. All of them were focused on the solitary eagle. Solitary eagle laughed heartily and roared, "Good! How satisfying!" He no longer held back his strength. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, and the black cloak on his body was suddenly torn apart by his own Xian Qi. The tattered pieces of cloth flew out in all directions. The solitary falcon's long hair stood upright, and pierced through the sky. He was going all out. June family. Guan Qinghan walked towards her courtyard with a heavy heart. As she walked, she thought about what had happened today. It was like a dream. She had experienced despair several times, but then she was instantly filled with happiness and satisfaction. Father had abandoned me for the sake of the big picture. But, I still have my third uncle and my brother-in-law. So, what do I have to fear? Mo Xie said that honor and disgrace are as important as the heavens. So, why should life and death matter? Is the Shui Han manor so invincible? Even if they are invincible, there is nothing to fear except death. So, what else is there to fear in this world? I didn't expect that guy to have such a heroic spirit. He's worthy of being a disciple of the Jun family. He's on par with his elder brother, Jun Mou. They're worthy of being brothers. Alas, I believe that brother Mou would have made the same choice as Mo Xie if he were here today. I believe that he would have made the same choice as Mo Xie. Guan Qinghan thought in her heart. This was the first time that she felt that the Jun family's courtyard was still so lovely and amiable even after losing Jun Mou. However, Guan Qinghan didn't realize that her heart wasn't as broken as it used to be when she thought of Jun Mou. Instead, it seemed, very distant. Guan Qinghan was lost in her thoughts when she bumped into someone. A tall and sturdy figure was standing at the entrance of her courtyard. This man was Guan Qinghan's biological father, Guan Donglu. Guan Donglu was standing in the middle of the rainstorm. His clothes were completely soaked, and it was hard to tell how long he had been standing in the rain. His face revealed a strange expression of pain as he stared at Guan Qinghan. He looked at his daughter, and didn't say a word for a long time. Guan Qinghan stared blankly at her father, and didn't know what to say for a while. Both father and daughter didn't say a word, and fell into a strange silence. Perhaps it was only for a moment, or perhaps it was after a long time, but the light from the lantern in the small courtyard shone on Guan Donglu's head. Guan Qinghan suddenly realized that her father's head had started to turn white without her noticing. Thinking back to when her father would play with her when she was a child, Guan Qinghan couldn't help but feel her heart soften, and the cold expression on her face suddenly melted. Finally, she opened her mouth and spoke in a low voice, "Father, Qinghan, do you blame father?" Guan Donglu looked at his daughter as the rain continued to pour down his head, but he didn't even bother to wipe it off. Guan Qinghan blankly shook her head, and her heart suddenly felt empty. "I don't blame father." Guan Qinghan's voice was soft as if she was talking in a dream. Father is Qinghan's father, but first and foremost, he is the head of the Guan family. The life and death of more than 1,000 people in the Guan family rests on father's shoulders, and your daughter understands your difficulties. It's been hard on you. Guan Donglu let out a deep sigh as he lowered his head. But when he looked up again, his eyes were filled with pain, but his gaze was filled with determination. "Qinghan, do you know that your father has wronged you? But what happened to you? If I were to do it all over again, I would." Guan Donglu's eyes were deep, and his heart seemed to be in a fierce struggle, but he eventually said, "I would still make the same choice. As the head of the Guan family, I may never be a good father in front of you, but I..." Guan Qinghan painfully shook her head, "Don't say it, don't say it." Suddenly, she realized that her father's body was drenched, and hastily said, "Father, please come inside and talk." "No, let's talk here. Perhaps there are many things I want to say, but once I go inside, I won't know how to say them." Guan Donglu smiled bitterly, regarding the matter of the Shuehan manor. "Haha, it's useless to talk about it now. But you are the person involved, and I must make you understand." Guan Qinghan tilted her face in extreme exhaustion. She sighed and said, "Father, please speak." At that time, after receiving the letter from the Shuehan manor, several elders of the family advised me to agree to this marriage. Guan Donglu painfully closed his eyes, and looked up at his daughter's deathly pale face. Their reason was very simple: "We don't have the ability to provoke the Shuehan manor, but if you were to marry them and become Li Tingyan's woman, then our Guan family would have a relationship with the Shuehan manor. Not only would this be beneficial to the family, but it would also be a great thing." Guan Qinghan bit her lips, and softly snorted. Her eyes suddenly flashed with extreme anger. The expression on her face also became ice-cold. "Even our family is divided into two factions. Qingbo has always been ambitious, and has always wanted to dominate the southeast region, so he urged me to agree." Guan Donglu frowned, and spoke in a low voice. "Qing, you and your mother insisted on not agreeing, and your mother would wash her face with tears every day because of this." Guan Qinghan's tender body trembled, and her eyes welled up with tears as her shoulders shrunk. Later on, the Shuehan manor put forward another condition. Guan Donglu looked into the distance. They proposed that as long as our Guan family becomes the young lord of the Shuehan manor, they would agree to the marriage. Apart from the fact that we wouldn't be given the title of the legal wife, they would also agree to let Qingbo enter the great master Li Ju Tian's tutelage. This was a huge bargaining chip, and the Guan family was utterly defeated. Guan Donglu's tone was filled with indescribable sorrow. "Therefore, I took Qingbo and Qingyu, and rushed to the Tianxiang city that very night. You know what happened after that. The only thing I don't know is what I, Guan Qinghan, am in the eyes of the Guan family. Am I a commodity? Or perhaps a bargaining chip? Whoever can give the Guan family more, will I belong to them? Guan Qinghan smiled mournfully. Qinghan didn't have any objections when the two families were engaged. Brother Mou was a hero, and marrying him wasn't a disgrace to me. Moreover, this was the decision of the Guan family, and I didn't have much of a choice. After that, I met Mou 3 times, and Mou was heroic, and warm-hearted. He was indeed a good match for a girl, and I was very grateful to the Guan family for arranging this marriage for me. Guan Donglu seemed to know what she was going to say, and lowered his head. But then, Mou sacrificed his life for the country. He was a hero. Yes, he was worthy of me, Guan Qinghan, waiting for him for the rest of my life. But at that time, I was already prepared to be a widow for Mou, and was even prepared to convince you, my mother, and the elders of the Guan family. But at that time, the elders told me that the Guan family had unanimously decided that Guan Qinghan would be a widow for Dashao. The reason was that we couldn't afford to lose the Jun family. You are the Guan family's daughter, and you must do everything for the Guan family. Guan Qinghan laughed mockingly. At that time, when they were forcing me, they didn't know that I had already made the same decision as them in my heart. However, I did it for my husband, while they used me as a gambling chip, a tool to maintain the relationship between the two families. Regarding this matter, I only feel a sincere sense of humiliation. Shame. When a girl's most beautiful dream was awakened, even her own reputation as a widow became something to be traded for. Guan Qinghan angrily said in a low voice, "Now, the Guan family has thoroughly established a foothold with the help of the Jun family. Father, ask yourself, whether it's in business or in martial arts, which aspect of the Guan family hasn't relied on the Jun family's support? But now, the Shui Han manor, which is even more powerful than the Jun family, has come to propose marriage, and the elders of the Guan family have suddenly changed their stance. And now, they are trying to force me to marry them again. Father, is there such a logic in this world? Did it ever occur to them that this girl had already been forced to marry once? That she's already someone else's woman? Moreover, she's the daughter-in-law of the Guan family's benefactor. Are they going to sell out their benefactor's wife? And they still have the face to force me? Chapter 185. Guan Qinghan's voice was full of anger and sorrow. I may be a widow in the Jun family, but I'm the eldest granddaughter-in-law. So, I'm only a concubine if I marry into the Li family. If Yun Bichen of the Shin Xian family takes a fancy to me, and wants me as a wife, a concubine, or a servant, then the family will be very willing. Perhaps they will force me. Yun Bichen will be stronger than Li Ju Tian, and the Guan family will get even more benefits. The Guan family is also a respectable family. Father, how can the Guan family be so shameless? How can they be so shameless? I'd rather be a widow in the Jun family for the rest of my life than to see those shameless people. I can't let those despicable people get away with it. Guan Qinghan's cold face was filled with determination and sadness. If I had to choose, I would rather let the Guan family perish like a heroic family than see a group of people with white hair and beards become a group of dogs wagging their tails and begging for mercy. Following these words, the unyielding and hysterical side of Guan Qinghan's character finally broke out. Guan Donglu stood there blankly, and his face was full of pain. Although his stature was still tall and sturdy, but it was filled with the desolation of a hero at the end of his road. Towards his daughter's sharp words, he really didn't know how to reply, nor did he know how to reply. The guilt and humiliation in his heart fiercely gnawed at his soul, causing all the meridians in his body to spasm painfully. Your daughter only wants to know, Father, what do you plan to do now? Guan Qinghan's back was facing her father, and her voice was somewhat desolate and powerless, but it was also filled with anger and coldness. Jun Wui has already given me the answer. Guangdong Lu smiled bitterly. Even if we cancel the engagement, the Shuehan Manor will still have to step over the corpses of the Jun family if they want you to step on the sedan chair. Guangdong Lu smiled self-deprecatingly. I, Guangdong Lu, am the head of the Guan family, but I can't afford to provoke the Jun family, nor the Shuehan Manor. But as you said, the Jun family is the benefactor of our Guan family. Our steward cannot be ungrateful. Guangdong Lu's voice suddenly became fierce. It's me, it's the entire Guan family that is abandoning their daughter, it's the Jun family that is protecting my daughter. To protect the daughter that I, her father, had already given up on. And the Shuehan Manor wants to rob and humiliate my daughter. I've been aggrieved my whole life, for the sake of my family, and for the sake of the big picture. This time, I want. Be a father for once. Guangdong Lu's face hardened as his eyes became bloodshot. I want to be a father. After saying this, Guangdong Lu suddenly felt a sense of relief in his heart. It was as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. To hell with life and death. That brat from the Jun family was right. If a family doesn't have a backbone, then what's the point of struggling at death's door? Father. Guan Qinghan's body fiercely shook as she suddenly turned around like a whirlwind to look at her father with eyes full of surprise. Guangdong Lu smiled faintly and nodded deeply. Qinghan, in this world, the Jun family isn't the only family that has a man, our Guan family also has a man. Guan Qinghan's face showed a proud expression as she said, I've always known that my father is a man of indomitable spirit, father is a good man. Guangdong Lu smiled bitterly and said, that brother-in-law of yours, his curses are very vicious. However, thanks to his curses, father has come to understand that there are some things in this world that a man must do even if he knows that he will die. Compared to these things, the big picture and survival are not important. He chuckled twice, and then suddenly asked in a strange tone, that debauchee you've been talking about in your letters, that good-for-nothing brother-in-law, is that him? It's not like he's an elephant. Guan Qinghan suddenly blushed to her ears and said, Father, you're making fun of me, but Mo Xia has changed a lot these days, compared to before, he really is like a different person. Right now, he's acting like a real man. Guangdong Lu smiled meaningfully and said, Is that so? Then why do you praise him so much when he cursed at your father? Humph. Father, you're so hateful. At this moment, Guan Qinghan felt as if she had returned to her childhood, unscrupulously acting like a spoiled child in front of her father. Guangdong Lu laughed heartily. Father, come in, the autumn rain is cold, it's not good for your body to get wet. Guan Qinghan suddenly felt sorry for her father. Now you finally feel sorry for me. It's too late, father's old bones are already soaked. Guangdong Lu laughed and joked, but today's rain is good. It's good. Drenched enough to call back my precious daughter's heart, drenched enough to wake me up. A man should be like this. If I sacrifice my daughter's innocence in exchange for a moment's survival, even though I'm still alive, I'd rather die. Finished speaking, he lovingly looked at his daughter, laughed heartily, and turned around to leave. His tall and sturdy body braved the wind and rain, one step at a time, but each step was filled with strength, it was abnormally steady and firm. Guan Qinghan's eyes became blurry with tears. On the other side, in the flowering shrubs a few feet away, Jun Wui quietly stood there, his rigid face showed a slight smile, and softly said to himself, Guangdong Lu, only now can you be the Guangdong Lu that I knew all those years ago. Only now can you be a qualified father, an iron-blooded man. Looking through the curtain of rain, Guangdong Lu thought to himself, when Mo Xia went out this time, why do I feel like something big is going to happen? Why hasn't he come back yet? I wonder how he's doing now. This nephew of mine, he's really mysterious. AI, ever since he promised to cure my leg, has there ever been a day when he's not mysterious? Being mysterious is good. With a light sigh, Guangdong Lu's body flashed, and suddenly disappeared without a trace. The masked man in black, also known as Jun Dashao, had borrowed the strength of Solitary Eagle's palm to fly backwards, and conveniently threw the Xian Dan into Solitary Eagle's hands. This hot potato had finally been given away. Jun Moxie's body flew backwards, and crashed into a large tree with a loud bang. Then, he immediately activated the yin-yang escape, and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Jun Moxie clutched his chest, and gasped for breath. The 8 great masters were the 8 great masters after all, worthy of standing at the peak of the world. The solitary falcon's attack had been a test, and he had put most of his strength behind it. But, the power contained in that attack had still made Jun Moxie feel very uncomfortable. In fact, he felt like vomiting in his chest. Jun Moxie was relying on the Hongjun Pagoda's energy to fill his meridians, and barely managed to avoid injury, but his heart was still somewhat shocked. So, the strength of the 8 great masters had actually reached such a level. Motherfucker, this bald eagle. One day, I'll teach him a lesson. Jun Moxie cursed in his heart, and paid attention to the fierce battle in front of him. Jun Dashao's 6 senses were locked on the surrounding space, and he frowned from time to time as he muttered to himself, how come there's still no movement? Could it be that such a big movement hasn't alerted anyone? Jun Moxie's original intention was naturally not as simple as inciting an intense battle. Nor was it as simple as causing chaos. In fact, Jun Moxie had another goal in mind besides finding out how to use the level 9 Xian Dan. Naturally, Jun Moxie would have made a more thorough plan if not for the Shui Hun Manor's incident in Tiannan City. He would have waited until he was certain that there would be no room for error, and would have at least waited until more experts had gathered in Tianxiang City. After all, the time when the Xian Dan had disappeared was still very close, and rashly appearing would only arouse suspicions in the hearts of those with deep thoughts. However, the Shui Han Manor's forced marriage had disrupted the young Master Jun's plan. Although the Li family wasn't an imminent threat, but it could be said that the young Master Jun's backside was on fire, and could explode at any time. Therefore, Jun Moxie had no choice but to reveal the fake Xian core ahead of time. As for whether or not it would achieve the desired effect, he could only leave it to fate. After all, the Li family would attack the Guan family and the Jun family if he delayed any further. The 3 elders of the Silver Blizzard City had been on guard against Shi Changshao the moment he made his move. Fei Ling had pounced on him, and Lei Wu Bei's 10 disciples had swarmed around him like a swarm of locusts. The skinny 6th disciple's lightness skills were truly outstanding. He had crossed the space between the solitary eagles and Shi Changxiao's gap, and had moved almost soundlessly into his bosom. This man's Xian Qi cultivation wasn't very high. In fact, he was at the Earth Xian level at best. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the weakest among the experts in the encirclement. However, his agility skills were superb and agile. His speed was so fast that even a peak Tian Xian expert wouldn't be able to match his speed. It wasn't clear how he had practiced, but the agility of his hands was unimaginable. It was probably due to his innate talent. Li Yuran had invited Lei Wu Bei's 10 disciples to descend from the mountain. Today, they were participating in a high-level battle for the Xian core. However, they weren't afraid even in the face of 2 spirit Xian great masters who were as famous as their master. In fact, they seemed to be very confident. And the reason for this was because of this man. It was because his speed was simply too fast. Even Jun Moxie had been hiding on the side. He had only vaguely seen his silhouette flash, and then it had turned into a shadow. Jun Moxie couldn't tell where his body had gone. Dozens of silhouettes attacked Solitary Eagle almost at the same time. Their strength exploded like a mountain torrent. Solitary Eagle didn't show any fear. He shouted, "Come at me." His body slid in the air like a goshawk, and streaked across the sky in a strange arc. He avoided Shi Changxiao's attack. His hands and feet rotated in the air like a spinning top. Then, he continued to chop and kick. He had single-handedly shaken all the experts except for Shi Changxiao. Shi Changxiao was furious. He had been the first to attack, but he was one of the 8 great masters. Moreover, his ranking was even higher than the solitary falcons. If he were to join forces with others to besiege the solitary falcon, then even if he were to kill the solitary falcon on the spot, the rumors would spread that he was inferior to the solitary falcon. Shi Changshao wouldn't be able to bear such a bad reputation. Besides, this was a battle between 2 great Xinxian masters. So, why would a small fry like you need to intervene? Chapter 186. Shi Changshao snorted fiercely, and his deep voice reverberated through the sky. The torrential rain in the sky seemed to have been shaken by his snort, and stopped for a moment. The invisible sound waves spread out like ripples along with the torrential rain, and the people who had pounced on him from all directions felt as if their hearts had been heavily pounded by a sledgehammer. In that instant, they all felt as if they had been slowed down by half a beat. Shi Changshao had actually retracted the attack that had been directed towards the solitary eagle in an instant. The attack that had already been launched seemed to have been tied to a rope in his hands, and he could retract it at will. It was like a basin of water that had already been poured out, and had suddenly flowed back just as it was about to reach the ground. Xinxian was an expert, and once he made a move, it would be earth-shattering. However, Shi Changshao was able to retract his attack as he pleased. What kind of profound cultivation did he have? At this moment, everyone felt as if time had suddenly flowed backwards in that instant. This feeling was strange to the extreme. Shi Changshao did not stop after he retracted his attack. He used the remaining momentum of the attack to launch a second attack. This time, it was even more powerful than before, and the target had changed to the people around him. Everyone in the surroundings had fallen into the range of Shi Changxiao's ferocious attack. In this incomparably chaotic moment, 2 figures leisurely floated over from afar, like clouds blown by the wind. They stood on the top of a large tree 40 to 50 feet away, and silently looked over. Jun Moxie, who had already concealed himself, suddenly felt the Hongjun pagoda in his mind churn, and it started to spin. With a jolt, he suddenly turned his head, and looked towards the misty rain, as if he had sensed something. His heart thumped, and he thought, they're finally here. The plan is considered half a success, but I don't know if it will. Shi Changshao angrily unleashed his power, and under the ferocious power, countless people were thrown out one after another. The 3 great elders saw that the situation was not good, and immediately made a decision to retreat at the same time. They retreated more than 10 feet away, and only then did they manage to stop Shi Changxiao's attack. Everyone saw the strength of a supreme-level expert, and could not help but look at each other in shock. The other Xinxian-level expert, Fei Mengchen, was not so lucky. His original target was the solitary eagle, but Shi Changxiao's attack had also hit him, and in the blink of an eye, he had suffered 9 palms and 1 kick from Shi Changxiao. Fortunately, his strength was strong, so he was not injured even though he retreated awkwardly. He knew that there was nothing he could do against Shi Changshao, so he could only curse as he retreated. However, the most unfortunate one was Li Yuran's 6th senior brother. That's because his speed was too fast. Everyone rushed over to take advantage of the opportunity. His speed was even faster than that of Fei Mengchen, the 3 great elders of the Silver Blizzard City, and the 4 great Xinxian experts. The cold-blooded great master Lei Wubei was proud to have such a disciple. But his mistake lay in the fact that he was too fast. Shi Changshao had arrived in front of the solitary falcon in the blink of an eye, but Shi Changshao had suddenly gone berserk, and had not only forced the 3 elders out, but had also cut off the solitary falcon's reinforcements. His speed was too fast, and he did not fall into Shi Changxiao's attack range. But it was very unfortunate that the solitary eagle was suddenly surrounded by a relatively empty space after Shi Changxiao's attack. And in this space, he was unlucky enough to face off against one of the 8 great masters, Solitary Eagle. Moreover, it was a one-on-one fight. His mind was shocked and frightened to the extreme at this time, but his hands still subconsciously maintained their previous movements. Moreover, they nimbly drilled into the lapel of the solitary eagle's clothes. It was very tragic. His speed was too fast, and it wasn't necessarily a good thing. This sixth senior brother was an excellent example. The solitary eagle had just launched his attack when he saw that everyone had been forced out by Shi Changshao. He was feeling depressed in his heart when he suddenly saw that there was such a daring guy in front of him. And this guy was not afraid of death, and had already put his hands into the lapel of his clothes. The Xian Dan would have been taken out if he had been a little bit slower. He couldn't help but feel angry and amused at the same time. An Earth Xian expert would have killed himself if he had succeeded in taking out one of the 8 great masters' belongings. After all, he would have lost a lot of face if this matter were to spread out. However, the solitary eagle would have succeeded if Shi Changshao hadn't held back his hand a moment ago. Moreover, he would have certainly succeeded with his astonishing speed. The timing he had chosen was very appropriate and very good. However, the illustrious reputation of the solitary eagle would have gone down the drain if he had succeeded. The 8 great masters had been emptied out by an Earth Xian expert. This would have been shocking news. Therefore, the solitary eagle was furious. 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 He was an arrogant and unruly person. He had always done things his own way. When had he ever put anyone in his eyes? He had taken the cold-blooded Master Lei Wu Bei's face into consideration earlier. But now... Fu *K Lei Wu Bei. The sixth brother only knew that his agility technique was superb. In fact, it was even superior to that of Tian Xian. However, he didn't know that the solitary eagle of the prairie was also famous for his agility and speed. However, he was the first among the 8 great masters in terms of agility and speed. The sixth brother only vaguely saw solitary eagle stretch out his hand and grab his wrist. The sound of bones breaking rang out as he grabbed his wrist. Then, solitary eagle let go of his hand, and grabbed his waist. Then, he raised it above his head. The sixth brother's incomparably flexible body didn't have the slightest ability to resist in the hands of solitary eagle. In fact, he had turned into a huge human-shaped doll that could be pinched and pinched at will. The sixth brother's train of thought came to an end, and he passed out. The solitary falcon didn't seem to care about the sixth brother's life or death. Instead, he began to twirl the thin body above his head like a windmill. Whooshing sounds could be heard, and countless afterimages could be seen in the process. Then, he threw the body towards his fellow disciples. 9 people stretched out their hands to catch the thin body. But, the thin body was spinning too fast, and its momentum was too fierce. So, several of the fellow disciples were smashed to the ground with a bang. They were sent flying 4 or 5 feet away. Then, they finally fell to the ground. They continued to spin like a spinning top for a while. The rainwater splashed in all directions. The surrounding Xian Qi illuminated the scene in a splendid and beautiful way. The grass under their bodies was rubbed clean. Then, they stopped. Even though they were unconscious, they were still stimulated by this throw. They screamed again, and were on the verge of death. Several of the fellow disciples rushed forward to check on him. Then, they cried out in grief and indignation. A living man had been played like a windmill. One could well imagine the result. His arms had been broken into 70 or 80 pieces by the Xian Qi. His legs had been broken. His waist and pelvis had been shattered. His dantian had been smashed. He would have been a cripple even if he had been barely able to survive. In fact, he would have been completely paralyzed. Courage wasn't a problem. In fact, daring to try was an advantage. But, it wasn't his fault if he didn't have the strength to back it up. He had rashly provoked a formidable enemy that he couldn't deal with. The sixth brother's fate was a good illustration of this. The eldest brother, Lei Jianhong, roared in grief and indignation. He stood up and angrily shouted, "Solitary eagle! You're ruthless. From now on, the cold-blooded master's disciples will fight you to the death. The solitary eagle's belly was full of anger. So, he angrily cursed, "Get lost. He has the guts to offend me. This is the reward he deserves. If he dares to provoke me again, I'll make sure that Lei Wu Bei's bloodline ends today." After being yelled at by him, the chests of the 9 Marshall brothers were so angry that they almost burst open. However, they forcefully endured it. Who was the solitary eagle? So, they weren't afraid of the consequences. It wouldn't be impossible for him to go berserk and kill all 10 of them if he were to go berserk. The only thing they could do right now was to endure for the time being. Then, they could slowly make plans. It was true that no one could offend the great master Shenxian's dignity. But, they would have to pay the price if they had offended him. Solitary eagle, this kind of melee is too boring. It would be better for the 2 of us to join hands and get rid of these people. Then, we'll find a quiet place to fight for 3 days and 3 nights. We'll let you have your fill. Then, we'll decide who the Xian Dan belongs to. What do you think? Shi Changxiao's words made everyone's complexion turn deathly pale. The 3 elders of the Silver Blizzard City might be lucky enough to escape if the 2 great masters were to join hands. But, no one else would be able to escape. Even Fei Mengchen was an expert of Shenxian's level. After all, he was only one person. And, his strength was far inferior to that of the 2 great masters. The solitary falcon laughed heartily, and slowly swept his gaze around the room. Whoever his gaze landed on, would involuntarily take a step back. Several people who were standing on the periphery of the room felt the solitary falcon's piercing gaze, and couldn't help but feel a burst of fear in their hearts when they saw the solitary falcon's piercing gaze. Then, they suddenly dropped their weapons, turned around, and ran away. Solitary eagle snorted. Then, he laughed and said, "Shi Changxiao, do you really think I'm a fool? I'll help you kill everyone here. Only you and your subordinates will be left alive. You can say that you've taken advantage of me. I'm here to fight. I'm not here for this Xian Dan. And, I won't help you kill anyone. Today, the Xian Dan is in my hands. Whoever can hit me, can take it. Who's interested in joining hands with you? Take this." Suddenly, Fei Ling dashed in front of Shi Changxiao. Then, he started to throw punches and kicks at Shi Changxiao. Some quick-witted people suddenly realized that if they really followed Shi Changxiao's suggestion, the 2 great masters would join hands to kill all the experts here. But, Shi Changxiao's subordinates wouldn't be harmed. And, even if they were to fight one-on-one, solitary eagle's strength would be inferior to Shi Changxiao's. So, the outcome of the Xian Dan would be obvious. In fact, the ownership of the Xian Dan might not necessarily be Shi Changxiao's real goal. After all, the people here were all top-notch experts from all over the world. In fact, there was no lack of experts in this world. If it was during normal times, any one of them would be enough to shake a region. But, today, they were gathered here because of the Xian Dan. If such a large number of experts were to be killed, it would be a great benefit to the God-bestowed empire that Shi Changxiao belonged to. And, Shi Changxiao was able to come up with such a vicious plan in such a short period of time. He wanted to use the hands of solitary eagle to kill everyone here. He was truly worthy of his title as the God-bestowed imperial preceptor. The college entrance examination has begun. I sincerely wish my brothers and sisters that each and every one of you will be able to get good results. I wish that each and every one of you will be admitted to the university of your dreams. And, from now on, your life will begin. Work hard. My brothers, my sisters. I look forward to your comments after the college entrance examination. Tell me about your happiness. Let me share the joy of your success. Let me be proud of my brothers and sisters. Chapter 187. Shi Changshao didn't get angry when he realized that the solitary falcon had seen through his thoughts. Instead of getting angry, he turned around to dodge the attack, and was just about to say something when he saw the solitary falcon charging towards the Silver Blizzard City's 3 elders. The solitary falcon's silhouette flashed as he charged towards the Silver Blizzard City's 3 elders. Then, the solitary falcon and Fei Mengchen exchanged 3 blows in a flash. Then, the solitary falcon let out a loud and crisp sound as he slapped each of Lei Wu Bei's 9 disciples. Then, the solitary falcon swept past the Sky Xian experts that Shi Changshao had brought with him. Solitary Eagle took advantage of this opportunity to attack more than 20 first-rate experts in the blink of an eye. This was his peerless agility technique, the 13 transformations of the Snow Eagle. His attacks were swift and fierce, and the 6th brother couldn't compare with them. This was the speed of a great master Shen Xian. Jun Moxie was hiding in the dark. He was cheering loudly in his heart. He deserves to be called the Divine Eagle of the Prairie. He's very sharp. He's reckless and impetuous. It's easy for him to fall into someone else's trap. But, his intentions are so clear. He's worthy of his reputation as a great master. It's not in vain that I've spent so much effort to frame him. Solitary Eagle's irascible actions had undoubtedly aroused everyone's anger. After all, not everyone could understand the twists and turns of the situation. Even those who could understand the subtleties of the situation wanted to take a gamble. After all, obtaining the Xian Dan was tantamount to obtaining the opportunity to ascend to the heavens in a single bound. Everyone's eyes turned red as they pounced on him. Even if it's not for the Xian Dan, it's for revenge. Even if it's not for revenge, it's for the Xian Dan. Solitary Eagle's expression became more and more excited. He roared and laughed as he displayed his superb agility. He weaved and weaved as he fought with all the experts. A shadow flashed, and Shi Changshao finally joined the fray. He attacked the solitary falcon with one hand, and attacked the 3 elders of the Silver Blizzard City with the other. The 5 elders then split up into 3 groups, and began to engage in a melee with each of them fighting 2 enemies at the same time. Shi Changzhao's thoughts were deep, and he had already figured out that only the solitary falcon or the 3 elders could contend against him. So, he would still have a big advantage if he could defeat either one of them. So, he decided to go all out. Ha, interesting. Fei Mengchen laughed loudly. He punched Solitary Eagle's back, and kicked Shi Changxiao's waist. Both of them flashed. Fei Mengchen let out a long roar as he entered the fray. He wanted to kill the 3 elders. Fei Mengchen was an imperial advisor. How could his thoughts be ordinary? He had also figured out the situation in an instant. He knew that he couldn't allow Shi Changxiao to defeat any one of them. Otherwise, the situation would become one-sided. However, his strength was far inferior to the other 3. He could only balance the 3 sides, and let this fight drag on for as long as possible. The 6 Supreme Divine Xian experts were entangled in a melee battle, causing the sky to darken and the earth to darken. Of these 6 people, apart from the 3 elders of the Silver Blizzard City, each had their own plans. It could be said that they were surrounded by enemies on all sides. No matter who it was, they could attack with their swords at any time. Their eyes were on the 4 sides, and their ears were on the lookout for any openings, and they would strike whenever there was a surprise attack. The 6 great masters Shen Xian had been trying their best to control the extent of their attacks. After all, if Shen Xian's power were to be fully unleashed, nothing would be left in the vicinity. Even Shi Changshao was no exception. Although he wanted to kill all the experts here, he still had to worry about his subordinates. After all, if he lost 6 first-class Xian Qi experts, it would not be worth it. However, the battle was getting more and more intense. The power of their attacks was gradually being unleashed, and there were signs of it going out of control. A shadow flashed, and Solitary Eagle shot out. He hit an expert who was watching the fight. With a swoosh sound, he returned to continue the fight. He laughed loudly. This was Solitary Eagle's superb agility. He was able to pull out of Shen Xian's melee at any time. But, no one except Solitary Eagle could pull off such a peerless agility. Even Shi Changshao couldn't do it. Lei Jianhong and his fellow disciples were watching the fight with rapt attention. Suddenly, one of the experts beside him was knocked down by the solitary falcon. Lei Jianhong was startled, and quickly retreated 2 steps in order to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. However, he didn't have enough time to dodge, and received a solid slap to the face. He couldn't help but be startled, angry, and furious. Solitary Eagle had already retreated by this time. So, who was the one who had attacked him? Several experts turned their heads to look at the source of the attack. Lei Jianhong had just retreated when a man fell down beside him. That man's companion rushed forward to support him. However, Lei Jianhong recognized him as the culprit who had slapped him. Lei Jianhong bellowed, and punched and kicked that man. That man was one of Shi Changxiao's subordinates. He was considered a high and mighty figure in the Shenxia Empire. So, how could he not be angry when Lei Jianhong had suddenly attacked him? He whistled, and 5 or 6 Tianxian experts rushed over. Lei Jianhong's 9 fellow disciples didn't know what was going on, but they knew that they would suffer if they didn't act quickly. In fact, their lives might even be in danger. After all, they were besieged by several Tianxian experts. So, they didn't hesitate any longer. They pulled out their swords, and swarmed forward. The one who had slapped Lei Jianhong in the dark was none other than Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao. Jun Dashao had used the yin-yang escape technique. His whole body was sometimes in the water, and sometimes in the soil. He had come and gone like a ghost. Moreover, the sky was filled with the colorful lights of the Xian Qi, and the rain hadn't stopped yet. So, no one had noticed Jun Moxie's movements. Jun Dashao was the first one who couldn't bear Lei Jianhong's arrogance. So, he slapped him twice in the face. Thus, he easily and happily provoked a fight between the 2 groups of people. The target had already appeared. Jun Moxie's next step was to make the situation more chaotic. The more people died, the better. And, the weaker the forces of each party, the better. The more people fought, the easier it was for them to fall into Lei Jian's trap. So, their anger grew bigger and bigger. Everyone had been trying to conserve their strength in the beginning. Then, they would fight over the Xian Dan. But, they were fighting with all their strength now. The ear-piercing sounds of swords clashing against each other were constantly accompanied by blood-curdling screams and groans. The fight had officially entered the white-hot stage with the first spurt of blood. Roar! In the end, the solitary falcon was the one who had suffered the most. In fact, the solitary falcon felt that this fight was the most satisfying he had ever fought in his life, but it was also the most strenuous he had ever fought in his life. His agility was undoubtedly the best, but his strength wasn't. Solitary Eagle spread out his arms along with this roar. The powerful aura of a supreme martial artist surged out crazily. It rolled in all directions like raging waves. The eagle god of the prairie, one of the 8 great supreme martial artists, was finally going to attack with all his strength. Shi Changshao let out a long and loud laugh. He soared into the sky. He seemed to be standing steadily in the sky amidst the lightning and thunder. His body flashed, and countless shadows appeared. His aura was also released without any concealment. It resisted the raging aura of Solitary Eagle. Fei Mengchen and the 3 great elders flew back at the same time. At this moment, the difference between the strengths of the 6 people could be seen. The powerful auras of the 2 supreme martial artists collided with each other like lightning. There was a loud bang. It seemed as if the entire space had been shattered. The heavy rain that had been falling from the sky stopped falling. Instead, it rose up into the sky. Suddenly, the sky turned into a dreamy and cruel scene. All the houses within a radius of 200 feet collapsed at the same time. The grass on the ground flew up along with their roots. All the trees, regardless of their thickness, were snapped and shot in all directions. However, in the face of such power, everyone present was suddenly stunned. Even the two supreme martial artists, who were about to go all out in the battle, were dumbfounded. That was because something very strange had happened. At the moment when a big tree was snapped, everyone could clearly hear the words of the big tree. 2 words. They were short and forceful. The voice was sonorous and sonorous. Fuck. The tree can actually speak. Then, the tree said another sentence. If you want to fight, then fight. How can a tree get in your way? It's the voice of that black-robed man. The third elder blurted out in surprise. So, that guy was hiding there. No wonder we couldn't find him. The two supreme martial artists, Shi Changshao and Solitary Eagle, knew that something strange was going on. They pounced on the tree at the same time. With a loud bang, they lifted the thick tree trunk into the sky. Then, it silently turned into dust. The two of them had used their yin force at the same time. However, they were disappointed. The tree didn't speak again. The tree was still a tree. It had been a tree earlier. Now, it was just wood dust. But, they were sure that there was no one there. The two supreme martial artists felt that they had lost face. They had let someone slip away right under their noses. They looked at each other. Then, they started to fight again. The one who was hiding on the big tree was naturally Jun Dashao. He was able to escape from the joint attack of the two supreme martial artists. After all, only he, Lord Dashao, could have such a magical power. He was indeed very powerful. How could an ordinary Xian Qi cultivator have such a skill? Jun Dashao had been hiding on the tree trunk. He was watching the fight in high spirits. He was analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of each move. After that, he would verify them in his mind. He was feeling carefree and happy. So, why did the tree trunk suddenly snap? The eldest young master was hidden on the tree trunk. Of course, he would be affected when the tree broke. He felt as if his waist was about to snap, and the pain was unbearable. He forcefully restrained himself from screaming, but he was still very angry at this unexpected calamity, so he couldn't help but curse. After he finished cursing, he felt that something was wrong. So, he drilled back into the ground. Once Shen Xian started to fight, they didn't have any scruples anymore. So, they used their trump cards and attacked each other fiercely. Solitary Eagle fought with Shi Changshao first. Then, he withstood the joint attack of the three supreme martial artists. Finally, he couldn't bear it anymore. He rolled his eyes. He had cultivated for almost 100 years. So, he took out the Xian Dan from his bosom. He shouted, "I don't want this broken toy anymore." He shook his hand. The Xian Dan flew toward Fei Mengchen. Chapter 188. Fei Mengchen immediately felt that something was wrong. She secretly blamed herself for being blinded by greed. The solitary eagle was obviously using her to cross the bridge. The 5 great masters behind her would have attacked her if she hadn't changed her stance. She wasn't a freak like the solitary eagle. Even if she didn't die, she would be seriously injured. She made a prompt decision as she thought of this. She pushed the Xian Dan away, and said coldly, "I don't want it either." The Xian Dan changed its direction, and flew towards the 3 elders of the Silver City. Fei Mengchen and the solitary eagle were both very shrewd. So, neither of them would throw the Xian Dan in the direction of Shi Changshao. Shi Changshao would have kept the Xian Dan, and then run away. His goal was different from the solitary eagle's. His goal was to get the Xian Dan. And there was no one present who could stop him. The solitary eagle also had the ability to do so. But he wouldn't run away. After all, he had come here to fight. For a time, the Xian core flew back and forth in the air, flying here and there. Unexpectedly no one dared to rashly catch it, because the Xian Dan wasn't a treasure anymore. Instead, it was a Yama's command that could summon the god of death. No matter which of them received the Xian core, they would definitely be besieged by the others. Shi Changshao would have rushed in that direction. The solitary eagle would have laughed and stopped him. But the two great masters would have joined forces to put pressure on the others. Solitary eagle was fighting to his heart's content. He was shouting and yelling. Shi Changxiao's face had turned black. Shi Changxiao's movements were extraordinary. But he couldn't be compared with the solitary eagle. Moreover, he couldn't defeat the solitary eagle in a few moves. So, he could only worry. The rest of the people were panting, and their faces were pale. Even Fei Mengchen couldn't take it anymore. Just like that, the Xian Dan glided back and forth freely in the air for a long time. It didn't land on the ground even once, nor did it fall into anyone's hands for more than a second. If a modern volleyball player were to see such a superb levitation technique, they would definitely prostrate themselves in admiration. Under Solitary Eagle's deliberate pranks and Jun Moxie's sneaky tricks, there were finally casualties in the large circle of people surrounding them. Moreover, there were quite a number of casualties. Shi Changshao had only moved his hands twice, and a large number of people had fallen like wheat. The moment Xian Dan flew out of Solitary Eagle's hand, Jun Moxie flew out in stealth mode. Between the group of Xin Xian and Tian Xian, it was like he was dancing on a steel wire on a cliff. Although he was in stealth mode, his body was real. If any of these experts touched him lightly, his life would be in danger. However, two black-clothed men were standing on top of a big tree several dozen feet away from the scene. Their eagle-like eyes were looking in their direction. However, their eyes were full of doubt. Third brother, look at that Xian Dan. I've been looking at it for a long time. The purity of its spirit energy is top-notch. But, why do I feel that something is wrong? A black-clothed man with thick eyebrows blinked his eyes. It's as if I've found a dragon saliva fruit. Why do I want to take a bite? I've seen many Xian Dan in the past. But, I've never felt this way. He smacked his lips as he spoke. There's indeed something wrong. It doesn't seem to be the energy of the Xian Dan. But, this energy is more. The third brother didn't say what it was. He just shook his head thoughtfully. This energy seems to be similar to the energy of the Heaven's Punishment Cave. But, it's more attractive than the Heaven's Punishment Cave. We must get this Xian Dan no matter what. Otherwise, our big brother. The third brother shuddered. He didn't finish his sentence. Third brother, it's just the two of us. Don't mention our big brother. I get chills just thinking about him. The black-clothed man with thick eyebrows shuddered. He turned around sneakily. It seemed as if he was afraid that the big brother would suddenly appear behind him. Our big brother doesn't have time to deal with you. Ever since second brother ran away, our big brother has been angry. He's been looking for second brother all these years. If second brother gets caught by our big brother, ha 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 ha. The third brother laughed gloatingly. It seemed as if he was looking forward to the second brother getting caught and beaten up by the big brother. Second brother. What's the point of following that person? Can he be better than us brothers living a free and unfettered life? I really don't understand. The black-clothed man with thick eyebrows shook his head. If I see him, I'll slap him too. Even if I don't slap him, I'll tear that person apart. You? Humph. If you meet second brother alone, I think second brother will throw you down from the sky. The third brother looked at him disdainfully. You're a brainless guy. Second brother will slap you with his claws. You might not even be a match for that person, let alone him. Are you still not convinced? His claws are indeed powerful. But, I'm not convinced by that person. Even though he's quite strong. The black-clothed man with thick eyebrows humphed. He wasn't convinced, but he still respected the facts. Pay attention. Shi Changshao is the strongest. He's going to get the Xian Dan. Get ready to take action and get the Xian Dan. The third brother said hastily. Both of them became alert at the same time. Suddenly, a whirlwind-like energy started to swirl under their feet. Slowly, the rain stopped falling from the sky. Instead, it condensed into a huge crystal ball under their feet. It was incomparably magnificent. But, no one, including the two supreme martial artists, Shi Changshao and the solitary eagle, noticed this. Could it be that these two people are actually not weaker than the 8 great martial artists? Otherwise, how could Shi Changshao and the solitary eagle miss them with their Xian Qi and strong divine sense? Shi Changshao let out a long whistle. He activated his Xian Qi without hesitation. He dashed towards the Xian Dan like a meteor. At this moment, the Xian Dan was the closest to him. But, the solitary eagle was still entangled with Fei Mengchen. The opportunity was fleeting. The other 5 Shenxian experts were aware of this. But, they couldn't stop it. The 3rd, 6th, and 9th elders of the Silver Blizzard City had jointly withstood Shi Changshao's attack. They were lucky enough to survive. But, they had used up a lot of their Xian Qi. So, they couldn't stop it even if they wanted to. Fei Mengchen didn't want the Xian Dan to fall into Shi Changshao's hands. But, she was only slightly stronger than the 3rd elder. Compared to the 8 great martial artists, there was a huge gap. So, she had participated in this battle with the intention of balancing all sides. Moreover, she was entangled with the solitary eagle. So, she was afraid that her life would be in danger. Although the Xian Dan was good, she needed to be alive to enjoy it. So, she could only watch helplessly. But, there was still one person who could stop Shi Changshao from getting the Xian Dan, and that was the solitary eagle. Solitary eagle's lightness skill was second to none among the 8 great martial artists. So, even if Shi Changshao was in front of him, solitary eagle would still have the opportunity to get the Xian Dan first. Even if he couldn't get the Xian Dan before Shi Changshao, as long as he attacked Shi Changshao wouldn't be willing to take a hit. So, he would fight desperately for the Xian Dan. It was a pity that solitary eagle's goal was not to get the Xian Dan. Moreover, he was satisfied with the battle and had the intention to retreat. So, he might as well stop Fei Mengchen and let Shi Changshao get the Xian Dan. Then, he would end the battle. Moreover, he could do Shi Changshao a favor. Being able to let someone of the same level owe him a favor was a very worthwhile deal. Solitary eagle understood his intention, and so did Shi Changshao. That was why he would go all out to get the Xian Dan. Although there were many people present, as long as the solitary eagle didn't cause any trouble, no one could stop him from getting the Xian Dan. He waved his right hand and released a strong suction force. The Xian Dan that he yearned for even in his dreams flew towards his hand automatically. It was about to fall into his hand. Shi Changshao flew with all his strength, and the Xian Dan slowly approached him. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. This supreme martial artist of life and death suddenly felt a slight excitement that he hadn't felt for many years. Level 9 Peak Xian Dan. Finally, I'm going to get it. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.